Okay.
they I don't know. So it might get wild in here because these guys do get a little well, there's usually sometimes it's funny, and then sometimes we get one or two guys that are just a big old troll.
Oh, I
I've
can
had to
only,
put I've had to put one of them on timeout before. I didn't even know I could
I
do it. I
can,
just kind of like clicked on it and I was like, oh, there's a timeout.
I can't imagine anybody would troll you. I can't.
I couldn't imagine that either.
Troll you like a sand bass, I'm sure.
Yeah. So like so when I called you the other day to do that, so I put out this like video on a red eye and stuff,
Mhm.
and I was we were doing something and guys were talking about this and that, and I was like, yeah, man, I got a great idea. I can get McCall on here and talk to him about, we all call it a trap, right? I mean, let's
That's what
just be
I've always called it.
right.
Trap,
There's like,
trap covers like all the models.
yeah, it's like a coat down here, and I don't know how everyone else, but the first time I heard someone say pop, I'm like, what is that? And I'm like,
Yeah.
no, we just call everything a coat. They're like, what's a
You must
Sprite?
have been
I'm like,
you must have been in Oklahoma with Hallman because it's popping
no,
over
I think I
here.
was way up, but yeah, everything's a chatterbait, everything's a freaking rattle trap. So
Yeah.
I'm interested. So it's weird that we all hang out, all of us, right? But we all kind of we rarely. I think all of us are scared at times to really like ask someone that we all like in our group. And when I say our group, not even our Rayburn group, just in circles. Sometimes you're like, man, I'm not asking him that because like he's figured it out. I'm not even going to ask about it. Do you feel that
Did
way too?
100%. It's always been one of my downfalls. I've spent so many years keeping trying to keep stuff to myself, and then of course never. I don't ever hardly ask anybody anything about any baits, and it's a downfall of mine because guys are willing to share with you. I mean, I've never maybe two or three fish have I ever weighed in on a bubble. And I mean, I know how many fish you catch on it, and it's never been my deal. Now I've had a few good days where I've caught fish on it, but it's just never been my deal. And when you know how many fish you catch on it, it should be. I mean, it's just like back when you and I went back and forth with what was the best weight bait and all that kind of stuff. I mean, it's you should ask
Yeah,
questions.
yeah. And the crazy thing, like, so I got on that swim jig bite. Well, shoot, you remember the Chaffly Basin, but I was on it
Mm.
way before then. But man, when I hear about a swim jig bite now, it I've got on one. Like I made a top 10 in the Toyota like a couple years ago on it, but rarely do I get on it. And I remember I can't remember what tournament me and you rolled up on, and you were like, "Yeah, I'm catching some on." I forget what tournament we were talking about.
I'm pretty sure it was the TTO at Rayburn 2 years ago because they were biting it. I think you and I had that
Yeah,
conversation. They were biting it like they used to bite it. I
yeah,
mean,
yeah.
it was on.
And you told me that, and I'm like, because you said you had like a big one or two, and I'm like, now remind you, we're talking big one or two, as in, uh, kind of like a 5 pounder, because at the time it was kind of hard to
Yeah,
like it was hard to catch a big one. I mean,
right.
that was a big one at that time. But yeah, I remember going. I just shook my head at that, going, I guarantee I can go throw this thing for hours and probably never get a bite.
Yeah,
I don't know what it
it's
is. That's like one of the few ones that like drove me crazy to this day.
well the last 2 years, not this fall, but the previous two falls since I moved back to Rayburn, I've caught a bunch of good fish on it in the fall. This year, I can't make them bite it. I mean, 14 incher, but not the fish I've caught the last 2 years. I'm trying to process what's going on with the low lake level because it's making fish act different, and it's definitely putting them in places that they haven't. The last 2 years, places that they've been, a lot of those places I can't catch fish on it this year. So it's weird what water conditions and everything do to the lake too.
Yeah, and I was out there yesterday, and but I've been kind of doing something different. So uh
You're doing what
well,
I need to be doing.
No, well, so every year for the past couple years, I haven't really like I've been a real big I've just been real standoffish towards Rayburn. I've just been tired of all the I just like to get away from Rayburn, right? I mean, I
Mhm.
just enjoy not being around Rayburn. And so I haven't hardly fished a tournament in January. And usually we have a bunch of other stuff popping up and schedulings. And so I haven't really worried about certain trails and events. And so this year, though, I was like, man, I'm going to kind of go out there a little bit more in December and January and try to learn some things differently. So that's what I've just been doing. I mean, I can always kind of go back to the way, I don't know. I'm just doing I'm trying to really look at Rayburn as a totally different thing. And it helps. I caught some fish in places that I've never even thought about ever fishing before.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm literally, I think every single place I fished yesterday, I've never made a cast on ever.
Well, and I mean, you're doing too. With my business now and with my little girl, I don't fish as much. It's not that I'm losing interest. It's just that, man, I have to, your kids play soccer. You got to prioritize your time, but the business takes up a lot of my time now. And the days that you can go out there and do what you're doing, and also the willingness that you're showing to learn scope is good. And I wish I could go spend just days trying to learn scope, because I'm just, it's hurting. I'm falling behind because I just don't know. And I know how to use it, but you spend time doing different things when you're on the water. Me, when I hit the water right now, if I'm fishing something, I have to go with what works. I don't get those extra days anymore like I used to, when I was fishing all the time and stuff like that. Now it's like I got to prioritize, and I don't get to go experiment. And that's good. You have the time to go do that, because it's going to pay off for you in the long run.
Long run, though, and I've had to prioritize it because I was like you probably 5 years ago. I got tired of Rayburn. I didn't want to go practice it. I didn't, and even when I didn't learn anything. It was just I didn't. I mean, I swear I could go like 2 years and not learn a single thing. Like never learn a single So it didn't matter if I idled, fish shallow, no matter what happened. So I finally just was. Scope has kind of rejuvenated me a little bit, as I'm just curious about it. Right. But I also know that you could go learn a technique, whatever it is, like a fishing technique, and possibly do good on it and win a tournament doing that. That's not live scope. Live scope's you can go out there and learn for 6 months and go figure out how to go catch 10 pounds a day, because that might be what it gets you, because it's so different. So you see guys winning on it. What you don't see, and we both know this, what you don't see is the 100 guys using it that just bomb doing it. Right. And so I know that. And so that's why a lot of times, I'm learning it. And then when the tournament rolls around, I'm not doing it. I'm doing something different because, And
well,
I'm mixing up.
You do. I mean, you're like me. You still just fish. And when you say Rayburn is probably one of, like you were talking about, you can go 2 years without learning anything. It's a product of, we've been fishing Rayburn for so long, and Rayburn fish usually do the same thing, and we get caught in that same trap of never trying to do anything different. That's easy to do at Rayburn. I think Rayburn's the easiest lake to get caught in that pattern.
Okay, so I'm going to go. Yes, but I'm going to throw something else, because I was thinking about this, and I'm going to get back to. We're going to get into I promise you, we'll get into the trap and the grass fishing, but this will lead into it. So they do the same thing, kind of, right? I would say it's probably. There's a couple of things I always say about Rayburn. It's probably the most. It's so hard to win a tournament on fishing spots, fishing holes, over time. You can win a tournament on a spot, but then for that spot to pay off, sometimes it pays off once, sometimes it might pay off 2 or 3 years. Rarely does it ever go past 2 years. So everyone's always like, oh, you got all these spots on Rayburn. I joked with everyone. This whole year, I started when I got put Garmin's on. I didn't have a single waypoint. I don't have a single waypoint from any years past on Rayburn right now. I mean, I go out to my graphs and show anybody that I started over because it doesn't matter to me. I mean, I don't care about those waypoints.
Every year is different. I mean, Clayton and I joked about this the other day fishing that last man standing tournament. We had 15 fish, 5 in the morning, 5 in the afternoon, 5 the next day. And I'm like, I'd be willing to bet that there aren't as many guys in this tournament that are bringing in 15 fish from every corner of the freaking lake. I mean, we had fish from Mud, the Forest, Harvey, Veach, Norris. I mean, it was funny because, I mean, exactly what you're going back to. We had to peck to get everything we got, and we're having to run all over the lake to do it because they're just – and you go to Toledo right now with a rattle trap, it's on at Toledo. But over here, they don't gang up like they used to. You know how they used to gang up.
Okay. So, like I said, I wanted to get in the trap thing, but I'm telling you, this is what I really wanted to get into with you. I really wanted to talk to you about this. So, I was looking back. I don't know when me and you started fishing against each other, like where it became like we started battling a lot on the week. I'd say like mid 2000s probably.
Yeah.
When I remember at one point, so I wasn't fishing. When was the first Toyota you won?
2006.
6? Okay.
6.
So I was, I didn't win my first tournament on Rayburn until that spring of 2006. Me and Jarrett won that sight fishing event, that Bass and Bucks, when we had like 35 pounds. That was kind of like when I started. That's when I really started fishing Rayburn. Was that was the year my dad died, and that was the year I started like I was like I kind of just jumped. That tournament kind of said, "Hey man, I think I can go fish with these guys."
Right.
I remember you fishing winning that tournament, and you were catching them on probably. Let me see if I get this right. Toe Thumper in the Peppergrass.
No, that's the one. That's the one. The same year that I finished second in.
Oh, okay.
The one I did win, I won it on a trap, except the last day I caught him on wacky line.
Okay. So you came in second in the Peppergrass in May.
Yes. Yeah, it was a May deal.
So I don't know if people realize this. This is the part that I can't figure out about Rayburn. And we've had many talks on here about the shallow fishing on Rayburn. No one will understand what it was like for 5 to like 8 years in the Peppergrass on Rayburn.
No doubt. No doubt.
But why? Why is that? Listen, I get it. We haven't had as much Peppergrass.
Right.
But I mean, and I remember like the forest being covered, like the Peckerwood Point and places like that. But I mean, still, it was insane how they would flock to it. And they do not do that anymore.
No, and you're right. We don't get it as good. And it seems like now more so when we do get it, I'll catch an occasional fish out on a swim jig out of it. I don't know what happened because throwing a toad or a frog over the Peppergrass used to be crazy. I mean, it was so much fun. I lived for that little stretch, to throw that over the
thousands.
Grass.
Like there were thousands of fish up there. And now it's like hard to figure out if there's like 10.
I know. It's another one of those things at this lake that I don't understand. I do not understand it.
And that's what we were talking about, how it changes. I mean, if you ever thought you were the best Peppergrass fisherman, right? And there for a while, I got hot on the frog in the pads. I don't even know what that's like anymore, throwing a frog in the pads. But right. It's crazy how it'll do that. And then when it washes up, when it's done, it's done. Like those fish don't even use that stuff anymore.
I don't understand it. And it was such a good pattern. I mean, even in the fall, I mean, it wasn't it was really
the fall
good.
Was better.
But it was really good when the shad were spawning. It was a huge deal then, but it got really good when the big ones moved up and started eating the perch. When the perch spawn started, that's when it was the deal.
I thought the fall sometimes had the biggest ones ever in it.
Yeah. The fall was good. Don't get me wrong.
Because man, I used to run up and down that lake, and there'd be a section about you could make about 2 casts in, and I mean it would be on the side of nothing, all by itself. Like you wouldn't like you purposely would almost wreck your boat trying to find this stuff, and then
Yes.
you go 1 cast to be a 4-pounder.
I mean, for a lot of those tournaments, I would run and try to find the most isolated patch that I could find. And I didn't care if I had to run, 10 miles a different
Yep.
direction, but I knew, there's a patch over there we're going to catch a big one out of. It was so much fun.
And it's weird talking about it now because I'm sure you probably never shared that. And we just shared it with, but it doesn't matter because after so many years, I've been going, like, I'm holding on to that secret, right? And then all of a sudden, 10 years later, I'm like, what am I holding on to? There's nothing, like, you know what I'm saying?
I know. It's crazy. I mean, so much old school stuff that we knew that doesn't play anymore, and I mean, I still got some things I try to hold on to, and some of them still work, but
they'll catch you a fish. They won't win a tournament.
Yeah, exactly.
I know. Like I keep on waiting for Paz to come back in Pofers, but I don't think it's, and I don't know this to be true, but this is what I was always told. And it kind of seems legit that pads grow from like one root, from like one single root. And so I'm always wondering, like, if pads ever did get started back in Pofers, but it would still take that, like, they don't just all of a sudden, like grass doesn't do that. Grass can grow because of different reasons, but when you look up at pads, you kind of like, oh, maybe that is why they grow the way they rarely pop up in a bunch of different sections. They pop up and then they're there, but they spread out from there. They never like pop up in multiple sections and grow together. You notice that?
Well, my deal is too, I don't know if you saw Jason Kahn put a post up about, I guess they're spraying fork. And he put a post that, hey, don't panic. They're just spraying one arm or fork. And then Jerry Mason made the comment that, he didn't think, it's been the high water that has messed with the grass. Well, and I've commented on his deal. I'm like, look, one thing I'm going to say, they sprayed Pofers in 2015, whatever year Ricky Guy won the Toyota. Because I was catching them in and around, all around the front of Pofers on a trap. I got pictures of big ones that I was catching. I was so ready for that tournament. Still ended up finishing 5th, I think, but I was so ready for that tournament. And the first morning I roll in there and there's boats spraying all the grass. Since that tournament, there have been no pads grow in the back part of Pofers. The grass has not grown in the back part of Pofers. The grass all around Jackson Hill has not come back to what it used to be.
No, but it's better.
It's better, but it's still, I don't know, but I think when they sprayed Pofers, they sprayed that whole area really hard because it's not, the cove by the boat ramp used to have good grass in it. It doesn't really get by the Castle boat ramp. It doesn't really get in there anymore either.
You don't think Monterey gets good grass?
Monterey does. Monterey and that one little area towards the canyons, but I mean the back.
But then it never goes back.
I can't remember the last time there was good grass. The year Ricky won was the last time I remember good grass being back there.
Yeah, it is weird how certain grass is growing really good in places like Monterey, and then it won't bend around the corner like that. And I don't understand. But I think so this guy right here, he goes, I will get into this. What's weird about Rayburn and the grass and stuff is that I don't understand why the South End won't grow it. I still can't figure out how Farmers and Needmore used to be the best places on the lake out there on the main lake. But I think the number one thing that hurts Rayburn for the shallow water fishing is that we don't have main lake grass. The more main lake grass we have, the better the shallow water is.
I 100% agree. And we don't get it growing out on all those ridges or anything anymore.
And just a little bit out there.
Right.
And actually, I think the South End benefits more than the North End.
Well, I mean, to what we're talking about, what has happened to the grass at Farmers and Needmore?
And it will not grow.
It will not grow. And I mean, that's a story, I guess, for a biologist to tell us whether we ever know the truth about what happened. But,
And they didn't spray down there.
Well, they supposedly sprayed when we had the big fish kill too, though. That's one of the areas that got, yeah. So that's always been the deal. That's everybody's always said that's what happened. It got sprayed. I don't get into all that because I don't want to get anybody mad at me, but I don't understand why the two of the best grass places on this lake before you and I were really fishing a lot of tournaments here. I can understand the Caney Flats. I can understand that when you got the water constantly moving across the Caney Flats, I could see where that would never grow back good. But I don't understand farmers need more.
Well, the thing I said, the number one, like whatever went on at Toledo, the number one thing that hurts grass, it's they could spray all the grass in the world, and the number one thing that hurts grass is freaking floods. Floods at high moving muddy water will kill every grass in the lake. It killed it at Rayburn. It's killed it at Toledo. That's number one. That's really what happened at Toledo. Now, it doesn't help, that you start spraying stuff when all the hot Sylvania came along. But I don't think.
But the deal is, Todd, just like what they did in Florida. Anybody at Okeechobee will tell you the same thing. It's not, okay, let's go spray the Sylvania. I get it. But don't start spraying every bush. Don't start spraying the hay grass. And, that's what happened a lot at Toledo. My understanding is when you get that product, you have to use all of it to get your allotment for the next year. So when you're you used it all on that, I mean, I guess you go and you spray every living piece of grass in the lake, and that kills it.
Yeah.
And, but luckily Toledo's starting to grow back again. There's a lot of grass coming up over there. And I think it finally got to a point that Toledo Bend was losing so much business because no one wanted to go there anymore. Yeah, it's a great lake. You can fish deep, you can catch them scoping, but I mean, so many people go over there to fish the grass, and if there's no grass, it's hard for them to fish it.
Yeah, and I think eventually, and I don't, like I said, I still don't understand because there used to be grass up north in certain places. Like it's growing at Toledo, but only in like 3 creeks, and then it still won't grow everywhere else. And I don't understand that. That I think is a spraying issue. I think what kills it and when it comes back is a flood issue.
Yeah. And where you're talking about too, Toledo, to me, the water at Toledo gets more volatile than the water at Rayburn. You know what I'm saying?
Rayburn because
a little cleaner.
Well, yeah, because they have to push it through.
Yeah, and it's such a big lake.
Yeah, Rayburn is by far the best lake because, and this is why I always say it'll be great because it rises and falls slowly.
Yeah,
and that's the best thing about our lakes. Like that's what Kentucky Lake hurts it so bad, but our lakes rise and fall so slowly that it never hurts the spawn. It never it changes it, but it usually doesn't ever hurt it.
Yeah.
Except when it got really, really low. Ish Monroe's calling. Hey, so all right, they're mad. We always get on this stuff, and I don't know how we got in this direction because we always put up topics. We never get into our topics. All right, so the deal with the trap. I'm going to give you my experience, and then I want to hear yours, and I want to see how different. When I first got there, that was like my first tournament ever. Was that December Bass and Bucks? I couldn't tell you the year, but mid 2000s. And I get there, and me and my buddy Eddie, we went out there and throwing red traps, right? And that's what we went and did, and caught them, and then caught some, right? But we didn't know what we were doing. Fast forward a year or two later, it was around, I think Angler's Quest had that championship, and it was in the fall. And I started going out there, and I remember I could take a what was that, Bleeding Shiner trap. I could go into Buck Bay and go catch 100. And
was this before or after they died? I'm trying to get the time.
When did they die? Oh, no. I was in high school.
Yeah. So I think you're talking about like the 94, 95 Anglers Choice Championship.
No, Angler's Quest. We're
Oh,
talking like
Anglers
mid
Quest. Okay.
2000s. Man, I ain't
My
that
bad.
old, Chris.
Well, I am. So
So, man, I was like in high school then. 94, I was a freshman or sophomore. Yeah. So like after all that, like
gotcha.
Rayburn was like kicking. Like grass was all out there. Like where we're talking about all that. I went into Buck Bay, and this is how much like I remember going to Buck Bay and crushing on them. And I left out of Buck Bay, and I didn't even know hardly how to drive. And I just went driving around going, okay, there's grass and stumps. This is how like my mind worked, like how simple it worked back then. I'm like, all right, grass, stumps. And I drove around. I went over there by Mill Creek, and there's some grass and stumps there. I'm like, oh, went through there, caught like a 9-pounder and some other ones. And I ended up back in Bear because like I saw stumps but no grass. Caught them back in there. I used to just drive around that lake just looking like I didn't look at drains, flats. I didn't know any of that stuff. I just drove around looking for that stuff and crushed on them.
Well, that's how you used to do it, though.
Yeah, but you can't do that now.
No, it's got to be detailed, specific now.
So why? So why?
I don't know, man. It's got to be because the lake gets so much more pressure, and I don't
believe that. I don't believe, dude. I was on the lake yesterday. There was. I saw 4 boats.
I had someone come in the shop yesterday, and this morning they told me they drove over the ramp over the dam yesterday, and public was full.
I put in it.
You've traveled
in Castle Boykins, and there was one other boat with me. And when I loaded, there were 3 boats. I don't know if I saw a single person shallow. I'll put it to you this way. I went to Caney, the Forest. I went down south to like Norris, and then I was in Harvey. I never saw a boat in all of Harvey, there's no boats anywhere.
You've traveled just as much as I do.
Well, that was a long travel day.
The top 3 lakes for me that get the most pressure: Gunnersville, Chickamauga, and Rayburn. But they all have the common denominator. They got grass, so they all stay pretty decent. But I think Rayburn just gets the heck beat out of it, and I think fish are becoming more and more accustomed to what's happening. I think Rayburn's gotten tougher. I definitely think Rayburn's gotten tougher.
You think there's less fish?
I do because I remember like there was a time
because the South End doesn't have them. That's why.
And that may be why, but I remember used to like November would roll around and everybody be in the woods. You go to the lake, there wouldn't hardly be anybody on the lake. I'd start my morning out. I'd catch me a couple fish on a trap, and I'm like, I'm gonna catch 100 today. That was my goal. And you used to be able to do that. Now it's like, don't get me wrong. We still have some 40, 50 fish days occasionally, but it's definitely not been on a trap in a long time. But you just, I don't have that same deal now when I go out there where it's like, I'm going to catch this many today. Now it's like, I hope I catch 15 today and we have a good day. We're used to, it was not like that.
Well, the shallow bite never got bad at Rayburn, ever. 12 months out of the year, it was always good. And I remember sight fishing all those times. Like I always go back to, I don't judge it off of like how many fish I catch, like how good a lake is. Like that goes into it. And then I look at like tournament results and things like that. Mm-hmm. But like guys have gotten better. So that's not, I don't consider that. What I'll say is I always, because I don't listen to anyone about how tough it gets or anything like that. Like I could care less. Like I won't even say that about a lake. What I'll say is that I'll add in like tournament results, how I'm catching them, and then usually what I saw sight fishing, right? Because I can get a very good judgment of lakes based on when I go sight fishing. Because above all that other stuff, sight fishing has nothing to do with catching them. It's just me visually looking in the water, seeing numbers of fish.
What's going on? Yeah.
Right. So when Toledo was killing it, right, that like people were like, oh, they're out there in the trees. I'm like, no, they're not, because I go up there in the shallow water in the springtime, and when everyone was catching 10-pounders like it was easy, yeah, it's because I was seeing 10-pounders every day on the bank. Like
Right.
It was the most phenomenal lake I'd ever seen. And then all of a sudden people stopped catching 10-pounders. I'm like, yeah, they're not up there on beds anymore either. Rayburn has gotten to me like that. But now with live scope, the problem is I don't have anything to base live scope on, like, because I can't go back in early 2000s and be like, hey, this is how many fish I see.
Right.
I really don't think, if you get in a really good lake, you see a lot of fish on live scope. When you don't see a lot of fish. I mean, it's really simple. I get it, but I don't think the numbers are there like they used to. I think guys are just better at winning tournaments and doing better. I just don't think the numbers are there.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. I think, I mean, when I do scope, I do see there are and you see pictures and you talk to people, there are a lot more groups of 2.5, 2 3/4 pound fish out. There's no doubt about that.
They've always been out there.
Right. They've always been there. And okay, so we have that out there. What's happening? What's going on shallow? What's happening?
I don't know.
Where the numbers aren't there at all, in my opinion, because I've gotten to where fall is my favorite time to fish Rayburn. And fall it gets tough, but I love to fish here in the fall. I mean, we catch good fish, and I enjoy it. But this year particularly, and we've had some good tournaments back in September, but this year I'm not catching the numbers that I just caught the last 2 years. The last year and the year before, fall fishing to me was really strong.
It was.
This year just doesn't. And again, does it, right now, does it go back to the lake level? I don't know, but it definitely seems off.
I like the lake level like this.
I do too, but is fish, like, let's say, fish up in the backs of the creeks every year, in November, they're going to go up a lot of the creeks. There's a lot of creeks right now that they're normally in that you get a certain way back, you can't get a bite. Is it because, now for me, is it because it's too low? I want to think that's what it is, or the water temperature just hasn't gotten right. But they've gone in there every November for the last 2 years.
Yeah, see, I don't worry. I don't listen to the whole water temp thing, because fish start going shallow in September.
They do.
Like, it's 100 degrees outside. So I mean, and like I said, the fish were up there in July it's a different fish that goes up there in September than the ones in July, but still, I don't know. I don't know.
It's one of them things that you just, you sometimes just wonder and can't figure out. And it's been that way for me this year of why there's not, certain fish where they're supposed to be.
Gotcha. Well, this question right here, we'll get into this one, but so I talked about that trap. Like, so when I first started, I started throwing, the trap was the first thing. And then once I figured out how to catch them on a trap, I just started like expanding. And then there for like 5 years, if a new trap came out, I bought it. So I have all those traps, and it's crazy. And I start seeing some of these guys where was it? Was asking about certain ones. Like, I used to throw that was the Lucky Craft one, right? The LV 500.
Yeah.
And so you've thrown all those. I'm not. I can't. You can share if you want to. I'm not even going to ask. But I mean, I know there's for a fact. I guarantee you. How about this? I'm going to guess. There's no doubt in a tournament, if you're going to go throw a trap, there's no way you have over 3 different brands. I would say 2 brands.
If I'm going to go,
maybe 3.
If it's a rattle trap deal, and I know I'm going to catch them on it. Over the years, I've usually had 8 rods, probably 3 brands, and different sizes depending on where I'm at. If I go to Gunnersville, I'm throwing a 3/4. Gunnersville, they just like a 3/4. Rayburn, a lot of guys like a 3/4. You know, Corey and Rusty would probably argue with you all day that they like a 3/4. I like a half at Rayburn. I've always thrown a half. You know, so there's just certain lakes they seem to like the bigger one, but I'm a big time half guy.
Yeah, I'm more half than 3/4. I feel like 3/4 is like if I threw it all day long. Yeah, I don't know. But you're throwing 3 different brands. One of them's the Yozuri.
Yep.
But you liked a different Yozuri. See, my favorite one, you don't have to say, I guarantee it wasn't the same one, but mine was the Drum Series.
Yeah, I wasn't much on that one.
Really?
Yeah.
I love that one.
Yeah. I mean, Bill Lewis Rod Trap, I've caught more fish on, won more money trap fishing with Bill Lewis than any other one. No doubt, head and shoulders above all of them. Now, the old one knocker.
Yeah,
that's a good one. The old one. I can't say much about the new one because every one of them I buy, you try to make the rattle go and they don't rattle, so I don't buy them. And then the Yozuri's always been a good one for me. And I have one that I paint. I know you probably know what color I paint it. I'm really not at liberty to share that, but I do have one that I paint up that has done me a lot of good. And it's not the black with the red. It's not the black red, but it is one that has been really good to me over the years.
See, and now, like just with Strike King, and it's weird how I went from from all those years really not having to I could go do whatever. When I say I could go do whatever I wanted to do, I just went and bought a whole bunch of stuff, and I don't know if it really helped me any. I remember when I talked to Phil, because I was throwing Strike Pro used to have this crankbait, and I don't know, I haven't thrown it since, but out there deep, and I caught more 10-pounders on that crankbait than I have. I wouldn't say now with the 6XD, but at the time it wasn't even close. However, no one ever had it, for one, but then two, no one was really doing it back then. So I can't sit there and say it was better. And then Phil was like, hey, man, just start throwing, I'm like, a Strike King bait. Just start throwing a 6XD. And I'm like, you don't understand, man. He said, hey, just over time, you'll get confidence with all the, throwing stuff. So then I go out there and sure enough, I start throwing the 6XD, trying to more and more. And then, one 10-pounder here, one 10-pounder there. And you start kind of forgetting about the past.
Right.
I started throwing the red eye, and when it was good, I caught him. When trapping was horrible, I didn't catch him. Right? It's all because I wouldn't catch him with the good stuff either, or what I would consider the old good stuff. So I started just getting used to the red eye. So I haven't thrown another traps in 6 or 7 years other than the red eye. Right. And I don't see it. It all kind of still stays the same with me. I mean, I still think it's definitely more about the spot and how you work it than the bait.
Well, I'm strong.
Don't even argue that, because I know.
I used to get the deal about the color all the time. Color doesn't matter. I'll give you two stories. Color makes a difference, 100%.
I didn't say color. Color
no,
matters.
I know, but I do think the trap itself can make a difference. I mean, if the grass is deeper and the water's cold, I tend to go to the Yozuri more. I something about the Yozuri gets a little bit deeper. Of course, it's a 5/8, but the Yozuri gets a little bit deeper, and when you slow roll the Yozuri, it really doesn't lose its vibe. I love the Bill Lewis when they're shallower, when they're on top of the grass.
Yeah, I knew that. Yeah.
That one is really good then. And then the one knocker is really the reason that I throw the one knocker is just because it just gives off the different sound. And that sound can make a huge difference. But, I have people tell me all the time, color doesn't matter. Well, Cecil and I, when we fish together, we were getting ready for December bass and bucks, and we were catching them really good. We were catching them on a -1 in a spinnerbait. Every time we went to the lake, it caught 16 or 17 pounds. Well, of course, we're getting ready to fish. Front comes through. We hadn't been throwing a trap at all. And I pick up a bleeding shiner trap, and Russell's throwing a Smoky Joe. Well, the bleeding shiner trap smoked Smoky Joe that day pretty bad. And of course, Russell, I got to tell the story on Russell because he's probably never told you this story. But we're out there fishing, and he's got his glass Falcon trap rod. And so, like, every 2 minutes, we caught, I don't know, 35, 40 fish that day. But every 2 minutes, I'm getting the net for Cecil's freaking grass fish. I mean, he caught some big hydrilla fish that day. You know, just, and it's grass, it's grass because he was throwing it on that grass rod. And I'm trying to teach him, hey, you got to use this medium heavy 6-power Falcon. That's what, because he was selling them. Maybe he might have been he was with Falcon at that time.
He was Falcon, yeah.
Yeah, but so that's one of the stories, that I mean, I don't know how many I caught that day, and Russell caught like 8. And when he finally switched to the color I was throwing late in the day, he started catching them. But the best story I have about traps and colors and conditions, because a lot of times when I have the 8 rods out or whatever I have out, it's for going in different places, different watercolor. Skies, I like certain colors in the sun. I like certain colors in the clouds. Well, in 2008, my last year on the tour, the first go around, 2009 season was getting ready to start, and they were going to Guntersville to start the year. And I wasn't going to get to fish. We had the stock market crash, Coppertone got out. That was my sponsor at the time. So I really didn't have the money, so I wasn't going to fish. Well, David Dudley calls me up. Dudley's one of my favorite people in the whole world. Love David. He calls me, and we had fished together one time at Travis, fun fishing. Dudley likes to get people to go fishing with him that he can try to learn something from. David does exactly what I didn't do in my career of trying to befriend people and learn things from them.
Who did he go with for so long that all he does? He must have just picked everyone that just throws a wacky rig.
Well, now see, during this time when we fished the tournament at Travis, and so we loaded up and we went to Choke Canyon. All right, and this was when Dudley was going through a really bad slump, and so he was really getting different people to go with him. And what Dudley did end up figuring out in that time period when he was slumping, that's also when he started throwing a shaky head all the time. Well, Dudley figured out I can go make $10,000 every tournament throwing a shaky head. I mean, one of the best moves that anybody's ever made. But of course, we were going to those type venues during that era on the tour, and we're going to those terrible lakes.
Where 12 pounds was awesome.
Absolutely, and Dudley adapted to that. But anyway, he's getting ready for the 2009 season, and that's when they had all the they'll feel you put guys on your team and pick your team and all that. Dudley called me up. He said, "Hey, sucker, I need you to tell me about this rattle trap. I know that, I'm fishing against you, and I have actually picked you to win the Guntersville tournament, but I need you to tell me something about it." And I said, "Well, Dudley," I said, "I'm not going." I said, "I just can't afford it." And he's like, "What?" So anyway, long story short, I break everything down for Dudley. I tell him what I do in the clouds, what I do in the sun. David's opinion of throwing a rattle trap was always, I put it on 12-pound line, and I'm lucky. It's a luck bait. A trap is a luck bait. That's what David told me. So anyway, I go through all these scenarios with him, and so they have the tournament, and Dudley finishes, I don't know, somewhere 3rd through 5th, and he calls me after the tournament, and he's telling me, he's like, "Man, the sun came out," and I'm like, "McCall told me to throw a chrome blue with orange belly." He said, "I tied it on. I had 17-pound line." He gave me the whole story, and he, gave me a lot of credit for helping him do good in that tournament, which to me, that was good. I mean, Dudley's as good as anybody in the business, but he listened to a lot of the stuff I had to tell him, and he had a great finish.
Well, and so I agree with all that. What I have, so here's where, with this one bait, okay, I rarely ever just go based off of like my experience. So like usually if I tell a story about why something's better, right? It's never because I love when people do that. You know, like I caught 20 fish today and I caught 10 yesterday. This color's better. I'm like, well, that has nothing to do with anything, right? So it almost always goes into I fished tons of team tournament stuff, and I fished a ton of you know, where I was looking at I fished like 150 tournaments, or probably 170 of like Bassmaster to FLW stuff with
Right.
co-anglers, right? So I'm always comparing at least my day at times with someone, or how many days I've had someone practicing with me, right? Because so every other bait, I've never seen this. This is the only bait I've ever seen of all the baits that John Salmon was one, but I've had so many guys get in that boat and throw in co-anglers, and I'll catch 30 that day, right? And smash on them. They'll catch 4, but they'll have like a 6 and a 5, and it's on some random color, you know.
Yeah.
And then I get a co-angler the next day, and I'll catch 30, you know, and maybe I have a good, and maybe they catch like, you know, this random 6-pounder eats it at the boat, and and I'm just going, and they never catch a bunch. They're always different colors. I've seen, and then all of a sudden, this other color's working, and nothing. I don't care if it's cloudy, sunny. They're just throwing whatever. Gilbert Harold still to this day practices with me. He loves throwing a trap. I don't even throw one anymore hardly, but I make him throw one just because in the back of my mind, I'm like, I want to make sure the trap bite's not going on.
Right.
I swear to you, you can ask. Should call him up right now. He will throw 6 to 8 different kinds and colors of trap in a day. And I get so mad at him because, like, I'm not paying attention. He's back there. He catches like a 4-pounder. And I'm like, oh, what color is that on? What are you throwing? And I'm like, all right. And then he catches like a 3-pounder, like in an hour and a half later. I'm like, you switched? And then I'm like, that ain't going to help me any. He's like, what do you mean? Yeah. I'm like, well, dude, if you catch him 8, I got to have a little confidence if I'm going to go do that, because he's not crushing on him. But like throughout the end of the day, he's got kind of a nice bag. And I'm like, hey, man, you're only allowed to throw one bait, one color. Pick it. That way I can, like, in the tournament, if things are going south, I can at least pick up that one bait and one color. But, man, I swear that you have your little of what you need to throw. But, man, I guarantee you I can pick out a trap color and every once in a while smoke you on it. And it's something you probably never throw. And there's no reason why. Right. And it might not ever work again.
There's no doubt about that. I mean, I'm set in my ways from what's worked, but I throw it.
But it's happened to you, correct?
Oh yeah, absolutely. But I mean, even back when, you know, we were catching them all the time and we were throwing a trap and you were throwing the bubba, and, you know, we were always had good sacks of fish and all that. It was always, I don't know how to explain it, but yes, I've had my butt kicked by someone throwing a different color, no doubt. But over consistency, I'm going to throw the trap like you're going to throw the bubba, and my makeup of what I want to do with that bait is going to work for me, just like the bubba is going to work for you. And you're going to pick up like me. If I go fishing tomorrow, the only color I know that's good on the bubba is a freaking gold. So that's the one I'm always picking up, and I might get one bite on it. So, and I'm not going to throw it enough to make myself realize how good it is, because I'm too busy throwing a rattle trap. And it's like, you can pick up it's easier to me to pick up a different color trap, because, you know, it seems like sometimes there are days they'll hit every one of them.
Yeah.
But there's days where there's no doubt in my mind, this trap, this bait makes a difference. Just like you would say the same thing with your bubba.
Well, the bubba was great because no one was throwing it. So, like, I could just go by the 100 of you guys throwing a red rattle trap.
No doubt.
I'd say for 10 years, I never threw a red rattle trap on Rayburn. I can honestly say that for 10 years I never threw one.
I don't doubt it one bit.
But then Gilbert was practicing like 4 years ago. we were in Veach, I believe, and we kind of got into some, and he caught like 3 behind me. And I was kind of like, so I pick one up and I start catching them. Well, shoot, I started every day there. I think I made the cut. And I mean, I was catching them in there on that. And I like every morning I was like, hey, this reminds me of the good old days.
Right.
But I mean, it has to, I want it to be that kind of good though. Like you'll get up there and throw it all day long for like 8 fish.
Yeah.
I can do that with other baits, but I can't with that one. But I used to, but not anymore.
Well, and here was the deal back in the day when the trap was so good. We could go fish and start somewhere. And sometimes you do start, and there's you could start and you could catch 20 pounds to start your day.
Yes.
Okay. That doesn't happen to us anymore. We have to run around. Doesn't happen to me. We have to run around, catch one here, one there, one here. But used to
not Corey, not Rusty Clark.
Oh no, they catch. Look, I'll tell you. Year before last, when they was on that big run, I knew exactly where they were catching them. I was starting in the same place, Keith and I. Every tournament we started in the same place.
On the south end?
No, it was in Beach.
Oh.
We'd catch 14 pounds. They'd catch 28, 35. I'm like, what? Yeah, I don't know. It was very, very frustrating.
I will say that. So this is what else I was going to ask. So this is what I want to talk about this retrieve stuff. I'm very like I go fish a tournament and drive back home and I don't get a phone call. Like I just got 2 phone calls, which is random, but from actual fishermen. But I don't think it had anything to do with fishing. No one ever calls me after a tournament. I don't talk to anyone, whatever. So I rarely hear of anything going on. It might be like weeks or months later. I hear of something and I'm like, oh, really? And then I find out that everyone in the world knew about this except me because I just didn't know.
Yeah.
So guys are always come up to me and be like, hey, I drew so-and-so and this is what they were doing. And I'm like, I tend not to believe any of it. So I'm literally asking you because I don't know. When I hear these different retrieves from like, I don't know who you would call like the best top 5 rattle trap fishermen of all time on Rayburn. I think we'd probably pick at least 3 or 4 of the same. I forgot who was Berge and who do you fish with?
Lance.
Yeah.
Lance.
Like I heard they were like Lance Hughes. I heard they were really good, but I know they were pretty good, but that's just hearsay, right?
Yeah.
I heard a lot of different things about a lot of different retrieves on rattle traps. And the one that bothers me the most is the one where it doesn't vibrate. Is that a thing? I've caught them like that, but are guys
dragging it like on the bottom?
No, you reel it so slow you don't feel it.
Well, okay. So the one tournament I can say, the second Toyota I won at Rayburn.
I'm not saying for you, but are people doing that?
I don't know anything about that, but I can tell you that the second one that I won at Rayburn, when it got so freaking cold and we had the snow and they canceled the day.
Oh, I told you were in trouble that one because I think I finished 4th or 5th, and I only caught 4.
What, the last day?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had the biggest bat. Like I was coming.
The guy that finished second, he told me I was lucky I won. Yeah, I mean.
No. I didn't say you're lucky or won. I said I was.
No, you didn't say. But
I wanted No, I hate when people say that. I said I wanted a third because I was kind of starting to figure it out a little bit. That first day was horrible.
Well, the first day was horrible, and the only reason that I weighed in 14 something the first day was because I had 9 pairs of gloves in the boat, and every one of them got wet, and I was freezing to death at 1:30. I was basically not fishing at 1:30 because I couldn't. It was so freaking cold.
Yeah.
But that one particular tournament, the second day or the final day, I was throwing it, and I mean just barely moving it. But I could still feel the wobble. But I never fish a trap that slow. But that particular day, I think the water that morning was 44 surface temp, and it was probably about 8 o'clock that morning when I got my first bite, and the fish missed it. But then I was like, they'll bite. And then that gave me enough confidence, and I had a really good day. I mean, I had 19 plus that day.
Did you?
And
So I had 4 for almost, I think, 17. But I didn't start catching them until like 12 o'clock. And I think I fished that thing slower than I ever had, the Bubba. And I started catching some big ones on it. And I was like, oh man, but it was, because I think I only had 13 on day. I think I caught some Carolina rigging is the only reason I even had a decent day on day one. Like I kind of got lucky, not lucky, but I mean, I ran into them. I didn't know that there were, some fish were there.
That's no doubt.
I've heard
that I caught them, and I mean, I was just barely moving that day.
I've heard this from multiple people.
The retrieve that drives me crazy is the yo-yo in it. That's a big Florida deal, and I'm not good at that. And Florida fish love that retrieve.
So okay, this is the best one. So we're at I did that Zona show, right? And so we're out there the day before because he called me up. He was like, I knew he was coming, but I think he was fishing, I think, with Keith the day before. So I was like, all right, I'll go out. Huh?
Here at Raven?
Yeah, we were here at Raven. A couple years ago, I did that show with him. So I was like, oh, okay, I'll go out there and make sure everything's like, I didn't know what we were going to go do, but I was like, I hadn't been to Rayburn. It was in the fall. I said, I'll go figure it out, see if it's what we're going to do. So we get out there, and it was me and Jason, and we're fishing and fishing. And next thing you know, they start schooling on us. And of course, the grass started growing in a place I hadn't seen grass grow in like years. And I wouldn't have ever even known grass was there, but they started schooling. And I was like, what the heck are fish doing? And they were shallow. And I'm like, what are they doing over there? And there was grass there. So we're catching them and everything. And then I was like, all right, well, we're just kind of going through baits. Like, so obviously the top water and like swim bait would work. And then I was throwing like a thunder cricket, and then Jason tied on a rattle trap. And I was like shaking my head going, whatever, dude. It's the fall, and it's like, it's hot. It's not cold fall. It's like, it's warm fall. Warm. And he's throwing that thing, and he starts catching, but we're catching them. When I say they're schooling, they were schooling, but now, they came up a couple times, but we're not catching them while they're schooling. I don't bet on that, right? So next thing you know, he starts like yo-yoing this thing, and it was one of those deals where he yo-yoed it, did something, went back to like get it, and he's got like a big one on, and he's messing around. And I'm watching him, and next thing you know, like 5 minutes later, he kind of does the same thing and like, don't, like big time yo-yoing it, like letting it fall. But we're shallow. We're like 5 foot. So I kind of do the same thing a little bit, catch one or two. I'm like, all right, I know how to do this. No big deal. Let's keep going. And what was funny was we cranked that day in the show as well, only because we left, did some other things, and we went to a spot I knew about. He caught an 11-pounder cranking with me. And I was like, oh, this is going to be a great show. So it shows when he catch one on the show with him. He'd probably get mad if I brought this up. But, dude, I smashed him on it. Like, I smashed him on it. And he doesn't show any of that in that. He never catches one, So it shows us catching them on like a Rage Swimmer and some other things and a 4.0 and stuff. But, dude, I smashed him on this red eye. And it was like, because I was letting it fall so long. He's like, we've done red eye shows before. I don't feel like doing this one. So it doesn't show any of that. But that was like, it was unreal. That was like the only time.
Well, from what I've read about that bait, and I've thrown the red eye some, but what I've read about it, that's kind of like sounded like what Van Dam wanted out of that bait. Was
him and Phil, that's what they wanted. Yeah. And it falls good like that. Yeah.
To answer Ken's question about the type of retrieves, the one thing that I do a lot is I'm a ripper. When it gets hung in the grass, I like you and I've talked about this. I like a heavier action rod because I like to rip it out of the grass because that's where you get most of the bites. Now, I know a lot of guys, and Bud Pruitt being one of them. Bud's, give Bud his due. He's won a lot of money on a trap. Bud is a featherer. He likes to just feather
just touch it. Yeah.
Yeah, just he feathers it over the top of the grass. Where I've always been a ripper. So I mean that's one. I mean that's definitely my main technique with is I've always ripped it over the grass.
So when I first started, I didn't understand the whole ripping it out of the grass thing, and the reason is because it was so good. I just threw it out there and smashed them on it. Right. I'm being serious. Like, no, I don't try to claim I was good. I just could go catch 100 of them on it, and I started realizing that the spot was more important than the bait and where I was at. And if I just went around throwing the thing, I didn't have to do any of that other stuff.
Hey, I took Dad to Toledo when he was here for Thanksgiving, and that's how it was at Toledo. Toledo, I don't know if I've gone to Toledo a lot in November and December. Those are two of my favorite months to fish that lake. And you can catch the numbers, and they group up big time. And we were doing that. You just throw it out there, and you'd hit the grass, and you just kept on with it. And instead of even pulling, they'd grab it, and it'd be buried in their throat. It's weird how these two lakes fish so different sometimes.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm telling you, when I first started fishing Rayburn, like I was used to going along like when I put a waypoint down, it was either a fish over 5 pounds or when I started like 5-6 casts in a row. And it would just be random. Like when I say random, it wasn't like this perfect drain that I had to start there in the morning time. It could just be on a point. I just throw out there in like 5, 6, 7 or 10, 12 in a row. And I'm going, all right, good spot. And then I catch like back-to-back 5 somewhere. And I'm like, oh, okay, or a stretch. Like that's how it used to be. Well, and now it's like you get 2 bites in a row. You're like, oh, they're here.
and then that's it. And then you got to go somewhere else. But to your point of what you're talking about, that's when I moved down here. Of course, I moved from Oklahoma. Fished docks, rocks, shallow wood. Yeah, that's all we fished. So when I moved down here, it was quite the transition to fishing grass. And I guess I got down here in 97. And from 97 to 2000, I would still drive to Texoma to fish tournaments. I had no confidence in fishing grass, except I did teach myself to learn how to fish grass in the winter, with the rattle trap. That was the first thing that I really learned. And it took me from 97 to 2000 to compete. Once 2000 got there, then I started getting really good with the trap. I started understanding everything. So it took me 3 years. And then slowly over time, I started developing all the other stuff, the flip and bite and everything else. Because when you come from where you've never fished grass before, it's different. I mean, and now I don't want to go anywhere that doesn't have grass because the grass lakes are just so much better.
Do you throw? I'm always shocked when guys catch them on a trap and there's no grass around. Do you throw it with no grass? Because guys do, and they kill us in tournaments at times doing it.
No, I know it. I know. And no, to be honest, I don't. There was a tournament. I went to Pickwick for an FLW one time, and we had fished a Toyota at Amstead. It's back when Amstead was still really good. And I finished 11th, and I basically had to get in the truck and drive straight to Pickwick. And the first day I caught 1, and this was back when the weights were always terrible at Pickwick. And the second day I ran down to where the grass was at Pickwick, and I didn't get a bite. And finally I had drawn a guy from there, and I looked at him and said, man, I need a place that's got a bank-to-bank creek where I can get out on the flat and throw a rattle trap on that flat. I said, I don't care if it's got grass or not. And that was about the one time that I ended up coming back and, I finished 30-something and I caught them all on a trap. And I just caught them back on the flat. And that was a big deal back when I fished the tour. We'd go to places early spring, again, when we're fishing those 8 and 9 pound events that a lot of guys – did catch them fishing the back ends, just fishing the little bends in the creek and on top of the flat. that was a big deal. It's especially at the Tennessee lakes. It seemed like. So to answer your question, I don't even hardly pick a trap up unless there's hydrilla.
Me neither. But man, so like, there was a guy. So Brady Winans was catching him on a trap at one of those Texoma events.
Mm-hmm.
And I was catching smallmouth in the same. I found out later, like we were kind of catching smallmouth in the same area. I don't know if I found that out afterwards or what. Obviously, it was probably afterwards. And he was fishing like mudlines with it.
Yeah.
And like crushing them. And I was going, God, I wouldn't even think to do that. Like that would be the last thing I would do was pick up a trap on mudlines at Texoma. But the Texoma, here's the problem with the trap for me to this day is exactly why I won't throw a buzzbait at Texoma. I will never throw a buzzbait at Texoma for the rest of my life. And I have not thrown one there in like 10 years. I will never throw one.
It's a good bait on that lake.
No, I don't care. I'll never throw a buzzbait. I almost throw buzz.
What did you lose? What did you lose? How big was it?
No, I never lost anything. So I'll never forget the Toyota there. I've told this story a couple of times. I'll never forget the Toyota. Crushed them on a buzzbait, had the hook cut, right? Throwing the buzzbait along, practice, 40, 50 bites a day. It was like the dumbest thing I'd ever seen. Pulling my bait down with no hook, all that stuff. Day one of the tournament, I get 25 bites on it. And I mean, I go up there to weigh in. Wait a minute, I didn't go to weigh in on day one. That's right, because I zeroed. I had 25 bites on a buzzbait. Not one of them ate it. My co-angler at the time had no bites. And I was so mad at the whole deal anyways that I gave him one of the exact same buzzbait I was throwing. 3 bites all day long is what he had. He had 3 bites. Huh? Caught every one of them. He's in the top 10. Day 2 rolls out there. Go back out there. 25 bites again. And we're not talking. Now remember, he's only got 3 bites. Okay. And he's in the top 10. Not because he had a limit or anything like that, because they're that big. They're all like 4-pounders. Next day, same deal. 25 bites. Give the guy a buzz, same one. I had 50 bites on a buzzbait, I swear to you. Not one of them ever hooked up. That guy had like 2 or 3 bites. He's in the top. Both my co-anglers made the top 10, throwing one behind me, throwing the exact same bait. And it's one of those baits that I swear to you, I used to roll around on Rayburn with it and practice with it because I'm like, it doesn't matter. They'll miss it all day long. So it doesn't matter. I can just keep throwing it. I don't have to hook any. That was the rattle trap for me on Rayburn, because I used to have some of the most phenomenal days in practice of like, no matter where I went, I caught 5-pounders here and there. And then the tournament rolls around and and I can understand some of them, but then it was like some places were so good that like, okay, I had 10 to 12 bites in this area. Mm-hmm. And you know me, I don't practice hard. I don't stick fish. Like
beat them up. Yep.
Man, I'm the biggest guy ever on like leaving fish alone. So that's why I have fish on all these different spots, because I'm always like looking for new stuff. And then nothing. And I would just get crushed tournament after tournament. And that's why I really don't throw one like that. That's why I took about a 10-year hiatus from throwing one. The buzzbait's it's a ban. I banned it from my arsenal. You can't find a buzzbait in my boat, right? I promise you.
Two things. A buzzbait, I mean, not that I'm the fisherman that I was at Texoma at one time, but I have probably – a buzzbait has always been one of my best baits on Texoma.
I know it is.
And then the other thing, funny story about what you're talking about all those bites. I fished a tournament, and it was Clayton and I fished together. It was an Angler's Quest tournament. I think it was me and Clayton. And then, this is back when I fished with Clayton some and fished with Pete some. I'm throwing a bleeding shiner rattle trap that day, and Clayton and I weigh in 10 pounds. And I guarantee you that day I had 25 fish at least hit that rattle trap in the right places, because this was when we were on a run away in 22 plus every tournament on that freaking trap. And so I miss all these fish on it that day. And
I know the tournament.
And I come to
the
Wayne,
tournament.
Pete's got 25 pounds throwing the same dang rattle trap.
And wins it, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I remember that.
I to this day, I don't understand how things like that happen.
I'm telling you.
That tournament.
What? So at Gunnersville, the final day at Gunnersville, in that championship like 2 years ago, they showed it a little bit on TV, but I showed it on my YouTube channel. Like I was catching them in practice. Now I had hooks on in practice because I wasn't getting very many bites on that thing, and it was kind of like an afterthought of me ever doing it. But I was like, okay, if I just put my head down, like after practicing, you say you got 4 days, and after day one, you don't have a great practice, but you're like, okay, if I put my head down and at least did this all day long, I'm going to get something.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like that might be a rattle trap with you at times where like you try everything else and like, hey, if I just put my head down, I'm going to catch some fish eventually. It's not the deal, but I will get bit, but I can't run a pattern on it. Nothing makes sense. But if I just put it in my hands, right?
You put it in your hands. Yep.
That's how I felt with like throwing that Chapo, that plopper at Gunnersville. And I always had hooks on it in practice. I might have had 1 or 2 in practice miss it of the 4 days. Like every day I'd randomly pick it up I might go like an hour and a half and get one bite, but it's going to be like a pretty big one. Well, I started getting a small pattern together. And I'm like, oh, you know what? Cool. I'm not even going to go run it anymore. I'm just going to do this in the tournament if like everything else goes down. Well, of course, day 1, day 2, I'm leading and then second. So when that final day came around and like everything, I couldn't get a bite, hardly doing anything. I went and ran it. And first spot, I ran through it. And I was almost to the end and I was going like, okay, I'm not going to do it anymore. And I get this giant to blow up on it, like a big one. And I'm like, God, I'm like, all right, cool. It's on. So I go to the next spot and then I had another one blow up, miss it. I'm like, no big deal. By the third one, I get another one to miss. And that's when I looked at it's all on camera. It's funny. I looked at him, I said, hey, I'm going to go over to this other bank. I'm going to get 2 bites. I'm not going to catch either one of them. And I'm going to leave and go back to the fishing docks again. And I rolled down that bank. I had 2 absolute monsters blow up, both miss it. I put it down, never picked it back up. And they were quiet in the boat too. Like my calling there and the guy never said it. They were just quiet. And dude, they're like, you called it. And I said, hey, look, I'm not negative. I've just seen this play out.
Right.
25-year-old Todd never puts it down. And I keep going. And at the end of the tournament, at the end of the day, I'm furious and I never throw this bait ever again. I said, but I've seen this before. I can't tell you what it is, but I've seen days like that. I said, I'm going to get bites and they're crushing it and missing it. And I was like, but I'm not going to do that because I've learned my lesson before. I put it up, never picked it back up, went back to fishing. And I still didn't do good, but I know I wouldn't have done good there. And it's crazy to think that, but you know what I'm saying?
When we went to Gunnersville in 2017, it was the first tournament of the year. And it's funny, I never knew that I had so many friends on tour until I practiced for that tournament, because everybody knew I was going to go there and I was going to throw a rattle trap. So all these guys that I know that throw a rattle trap from Texas, live at Rayburn, whatever, every day, text message, phone calls. Are you getting bit? Yeah, I'm getting bit. I'm getting, it was a tough tournament. It was a tough tournament, but I'm getting 7, 8 bites a day. But what I'm leaving out when they call me is I'm not putting my rattle trap down all day.
All day.
I'm throwing it all day. And so many guys in that tournament got caught up in, well, I'll pick it up and, and then I'll go do this and that. I finished 10th, but I mean, yeah, I caught a few on a chatterbait, but 90% of the day I threw a rattle trap. It's like what you're talking about. Sometimes you just got to put your most confident bait in your hands. Of course, that's easy to say when you're at Gunnersville, because Gunnersville is a really good trap lake. I think Gunnersville and Toledo are easily 2 of the best trap lakes I've ever fished.
Better than Rayburn?
I
Better
don't
than
think
Rayburn now. Was it better? It was.
yeah.
What about like 2000 Rayburn?
No. There was a time Rayburn was a great rattle trap lake. And to this day, guys still go out and occasionally win a tournament on Rayburn, but I think it's the hardest thing in the world to do now.
You think guys go win a rattle trap tournament?
I think I think potentially there are guys that have caught 24, 25 pounds in one trap tournaments the last few years. I don't think it happens regular.
How many years you say?
Last few years, there's probably been a
Okay.
guy or two. It's not a regular occurrence. Don't get me. I mean, those days have changed. I mean, you know how much I used to look forward to December through the end of February. Now it's like I'm going to go out there and I might get paid. Now, a Toyota, yeah, I can throw a rattle trap all day, every day, and I'm going to get paid. But as far as, I was looking at it the other night. I haven't, as good as I've done in the Toyotas, which is, I think I've had a really good Toyota career. I haven't made a top 10 in a Toyota since 19. I think that's right. I think it was. And I finished in the money most tournaments at Rayburn, but finishing in the 20s with a rattle trap.
A guy called me up today. A guy so he was like, "Hey, I'm going to be down there. Let's meet up, after Christmas." And I was like, and he fishes the Toyotas, and I kind of know him, and I was like, "All right." And he was like, "Hey, man, real quick, do you think you can win a tournament shallow in February on Rayburn?" And I was like, I'm thinking about my what went through my head, probably like yours. And I was like, and I went back and forth, and I'm like, wait a minute. Okay, hold on. And I was like, I don't know, man. And I said, yes, no, one day event. I don't know. And then I went back to like 3. I said, but for a Toyota, and I think he's fishing the Invitational. I didn't know that, but I think he's fishing that. I said, yeah, the longer you go, the better the rattle trap bite gets for you, that you can win one doing that. Or top 10 it. I don't know if you can. I said, and then I started thinking about like, okay, wait a minute. What if it blows every day, 100% you can.
If you get really bad conditions that can keep everybody off the lake, which is how I won my last Toyota at Rayburn.
Yeah, but they stopped. The problem is they stopped doing that. They started canceling days. So when you cancel days, it actually helps all the deep fishermen out, and it hurts the shallow guys.
It does. It does.
I'm not complaining. I don't care whether they cancel them or not. I've been like, I like my boat staying in one piece, because you fish enough tournaments on Rayburn in January, February, and they make you go out and that stuff, dude. It costs a lot more fixing your boat than it does. You know what I'm saying? I mean, dude, people have no clue.
Dude, remember when we didn't used to care? I mean, I know that I can tell you when I started caring about 3 or 4 years ago when I had so much trouble selling a boat. I'm like, man, I need to ease up.
Yeah, no, I ease up.
Yeah, I have eased up a lot from back in the day when I'd run the canyons and 20-mile-an-hour northwest winds.
Yeah, but they don't let us out there in those, and I don't blame them. Like honestly, they shouldn't. I don't even want to get into that, but I've been around enough guys driving those boats that shouldn't be. I'll put it to you this way. I should never say this, but I can tell you one thing. I would, if my kids, I don't know if my kids will ever fish, could care less if they do. I would never let my a kid that's 18 years or younger get in one of those events. Yeah. There's no way. I can't believe people let people do it.
And the reason is, it's gotten worse. It's gotten.
I don't like riding with people, but you think I'm going to let my kid go ride around with some of these guys? Right. I don't care if it's dead calm out there. You're crazy. There's no way.
Yeah. I like that question. Will the rattle trap open be one on a trap? I would say it would be, but now with their crankbait and jerk bait to forward facing sonar, I don't know.
It's one.
It's usually one on a trap.
It'll be one because it's too hard. Like that live scoping thing I've done, man. Catching fish is one thing. It's gonna take 20 pounds, right?
You know, it's
Has it
on a week.
always?
No, it's not always. Clayton and I, the year we won it, I think we won it with, I don't think we won it with 20, but that thing falls on the heels of, I think there's, I think that's the weekend of the ABA Pro
What's
Am thing.
what's the
And
weekend?
there's,
Is it February?
to be honest with you, I'd have to look at my calendar, but it falls on the heel. It's on a Sunday and it falls on the heels of a Friday, Saturday. It's an ABA Pro Am and maybe a Bass Champs or a Triple T, and that tournament falls on Sunday.
Well,
So
I know we got a BFL on the 6th, and then we got a Bass Champs coming up like late, and then a Brandon Belt deal. And then I think the invitational's right after that. And then the TXCT's got to be in there too.
Yeah, it's crazy because, you know, like you guys do. I mean, we've kind of been looking at the schedule and what all we want to fish, and it's amazing how many tournaments are piling on top of each other, and then we have open weekends with no tournaments. It's like, you know, and I'm not just saying that they're all piling on Rayburn. You've got
Oh,
a tournament trail that'll be up, you know, somewhere else that you're like, man, I'd like to fish that tournament trail, but it's the same day as
you might have cut out. Yeah, there's a bunch of bad. I don't know if y'all can still hear him, but I think this year, and I've said this before, that this year, this is the worst I've ever seen scheduling wise, for guys like us that try to do that try to put in tournament scheduling together. I don't know what it is. This has just been a really weird. Yeah, he did freeze. He'd probably get back in. He should be able to figure it out. But yeah, Andrew, if it's on January 21st, then I know we have a Bass Champs on the 20th, and I would say that as a whole, we don't have too many tournaments before then. So that's a good thing. The problem is, and when if Chris gets back on, I'll ask him. I don't think January is very good for a trap. I think February is when it really starts getting good. I think you can catch big ones in January, and you can catch big ones in February too. You're not going to get as many bites. You're not going to catch as many fish in January as you would February. Now, maybe unless you have one of these warm winters, and every once in a while we have a warm winter where I've seen some fish try to start spawning in late January. So I mean, if that's the case, then it'll be phenomenal. But usually it's pretty tough in January. I think it always has. I think January is the worst month of the year. It's always been the case for me. I think you see decent weights, like you'll see winning weights, like guys get caught up in like the winning weight, or I don't care about winning weights. I care more about, like, I'm not saying, like, I judge tournaments and fishing not based on the winning weight. I do it based on like the top 10. So you might have a guy who has 35 and second's like 17. Well, fishing is not good just because some guy had 35, right? And if you look at most January events, one, the window of the feeding time is so small. It's usually a morning deal, like the first hour, and then he's trying to get back on. And so I just think January is pretty tough. I was interested. I'm shocked. I'll talk about it now since he's not on here. I'm shocked he doesn't. Maybe he doesn't want to. I got to be honest with you guys. I don't know. Like I'm curious as to how much he's kept some stuff back, and I have zero problem with that. Like, I don't expect anyone to give out everything, but I'm shocked that he didn't talk more about the slow retrieve, because I don't know if that is. I've done it. When I say slow retrieve, there's this like thing out there that guys will fish that thing not on bottom, but they'll reel it so slow that it doesn't really vibrate. And I'm not talking about just a rattle trap. I'm talking about any of them. And I've done it before, and it's worked a little bit. And then sometimes, but then I had a lot of bites doing it where they missed it. And so and it's very hard to do. Like if you get out, it's very hard. Imagine this. Imagine going, okay, I'm going to go throw this chatterbait, right? And what if there was a way to throw the chatterbait to where it stopped vibrating, right? Like the whole deal is you're trying to get that thing to vibrate. It's the same thing with this. And I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. I think he's back. So I was talking about you. I was talking about that I was like, man, I'm really shocked. I was really shocked about the retrieve deal and like reeling it really slow, that you didn't have more, that you hadn't heard more of that.
Man, on the trap, I do my own thing.
I know, but you hadn't heard guys like, I can talk about quite a few people that's like some of the best. That's what people say about them, that's what they're doing. I don't know.
And maybe that's why I'm not catching as many lately. I don't know. I mean, when it's cold, I can understand reeling it really slow.
Not even cold.
Hey, now look, I mean, I know that the year that Clayton and I won the trap tournament, and I don't remember what year that was, I think Clint Wade and Stacy finished second. And I don't know this for a fact, but I think the way he told me that day at weigh-in, they were fishing. They had that one area out there around Calhoun that they were catching a lot of fish on. And I think that they were basically throwing it out, letting it go to the bottom, in deep water and working it up off the bottom. So a rattle trap is probably one of the most, one of the baits you can do a lot of different things with. And there's probably things that I don't even know about it.
Right. And I'm, the rattle trap tournament always is one of those, like, so I don't think I've ever fished it ever. I don't really know what it's like now. Like, I'll be honest with you. I don't really know. I was asked one time to go fish another tournament like that. And I was going, man, I don't know if I can. And they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, I don't know if my position was Strike King. I was like, probably no one would care, but maybe it would be frowned upon.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
I don't know.
I got to
ask
fish it.
either.
I got to fish it, and then when I was, on the Bill Lois rattle trap team and stuff, we didn't get to fish it. I didn't get to fish it for several years, and then last year they finally.
Why? Because you were on the.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we were. Yeah. Yeah, okay. And then, but last year they let Dickie and I both fish it. Well, I can't say that Dickie ever got where he couldn't fish it, but there was a time that Wes was like, "Man, I appreciate you didn't fish." Dickie, he gets away with everything, so they probably just let him fish.
Do you think is Dickie in that top 5?
Rattle trap guys? Yeah, no question.
Okay. Well, I had him in there. I wanted to see because I was telling everyone after me and you talked, and I asked you. I went on here and said, "Hey, man, I think I'm gonna get Chris on here," and everyone's like, "All right, cool," and then they're like, "Hey, what about Dickie?" And I was like, and I'm cool with Dickie. I don't know if he would. He might. I don't know. I didn't even think about asking him, but he might get on here and do that. But I mean,
oh yeah,
I figured. I don't know, but I figured he was in there. You were in there. Who else?
The fun thing about Dickie and I is we have always we give each other so much heck about rattle trap fishing. And Dickie is actually the one guy that I have been able to bounce some stuff off. Now, Dickie's not real good about telling the truth. Let me throw that out there for America. Dickie Newberry does not like to tell the truth.
That's why I didn't know. That's why I didn't know if I'd have him on here. I was like, and when you got off, I was like, hey, Chris probably has kept. So when you're off, I was like, Chris probably has kept some stuff back, and I have no problem with that, like as he should. And I was like, I don't know if Dickie would just flat out just get on here and lie to everyone.
But to me, it's not. It's not as big a deal to me anymore because number one, it's not as effective on this lake as it was. Number two, I'm not gonna. I'm not the
You
guy
can
that I
say it.
was. I'm not the
Just
guy
say
I
it.
was. I'm not the guy I was 4 or 5 years ago. I'm not.
Oh,
I'm not aggressively. I'm not aggressively got that attitude, and I hate that I've lost that attitude. I mean, for several years of my career, you have been motivation for me in tournaments because I got to beat Todd. I know if I'm going to get paid or if I'm going to win, I got to beat Todd. And over the years, we've all kind of gelled out a little bit, and that motivation. Of course, like I said, I'm not making excuses, but with my business and my little girl, I don't have time to get caught up in it like I did.
well, there were parts of me that like you said, you told everyone what was going on at Gunnersville, and yet you still went out there and did it, right? I when I started this YouTube thing, I didn't really want to put anything out, and there's still stuff I don't, right? What I started realizing, and I don't know if I want to think this is true because I fished so many tournaments, and like you knew about the Bubba, and yet you didn't go throw one, right?
Right.
I knew about the rattle trap, and yet if it's a rattle trap deal and you're going to get on it, go have it, right? And if you win, you win. Like, congratulations, right? And it is what it is. I've over the years just like gone more to like what I want to go do, regardless of what everyone else is doing. But then there's a part of me that knows too that if it is a rattle trap deal and you went and told every single person on Rayburn, which they already knew anyways, it's like they weren't out there practicing for 12 hours a day and never putting it down. They weren't doing all the things that you need to do to be good with it. So YouTube kind of showed me that you'll give away a little bit, but in reality, if guys don't want to work that hard to go figure it out, right? And when I say work hard, not 2 12-hour days. We're talking, 5 years of doing it, to where I'm not saying you need 5 years to go win a tournament, but at some point in time, you're like, yeah, man, they just got to figure it out whether they want to go do it or not.
Yeah, I mean, that is what I say is me not being aggressive. As I just don't. Maybe I make excuses because I just don't. I don't get out there. I need to be out there. I need to be learning this stuff. I should have tried to learn that the strike, the Bubba bait, long time ago. But again, it goes back to that time of year. You always threw a Bubba. I always threw a rattle trap. That was, it's kind of a deal. I mean, it's kind of like I said earlier, our wake baits. You threw a certain wake bait. We threw a certain wake bait. You threw a certain swim jig. I threw a certain swim jig. We had our own niche of sponsor wise or not. This was the bait we were going to throw. This is what we were going to learn, and that's what we did. And now it's the niche is now, you need to learn your electronics more than you need to learn a bait right now. And I think that, just off topic, talking about that, I think tackle companies are kind of the bread and butter baits for them, the shallow baits, the traps, the spinner bait. I think those companies, I don't know. That's what I'm assuming. And now if you're a company and you're not going and trying to make something that can be seen on that screen that people are using, you're kind of like I am, getting left behind.
Well,
but you're here's what I'll say about you, and like you and Russell, that is better than what I do. You guys will still try to figure out something in the realm of your world of fishing, and I'm still trying to make things work in my realm of fishing. And so that's too blindsided.
There's so many topics right there. Me and Russell, I'll never so we all give each other. I mean, we're all rough on folks, right? And what I mean by that is, like, you can sometimes hear me and Russell freaking giving it to someone, and usually if freaking David Curtis is around, right? Russell's giving it to David Curtis. Like, we're out there on the water, whatever. And, David Curtis is always, woe is me, whatever. And Russell's just like, yeah, that's because you're old, man. And Russell and me have had very honest conversations about the fact that as all these great fishermen get older, they're not as good. And I think there's a lot of reasons why that is. And so I have tried to be very, very, at least aware of that. And so for years, you know, I was like you, I didn't really want to get out there and practice Rayburn as much. I wanted to just kind of like do it, and not other lakes. And I really wanted to get away from Rayburn. I wanted to go all these other lakes, and I enjoyed going to other lakes and practicing. It was so much fun. Rayburn, the problem was I knew what it took to win on Rayburn. And I liked when the fishing, you could catch them up shallow. When the deep deal got going, and I think we were probably one of the first ones out deep to really get it going for a long period of time. You know, we could go back and forth deep or shallow. So we kind of kept everyone off track. What I would say about the deep deal, though, is it only took a couple times after a couple years and a couple incidences of people, you know, hole jumping you, and you go spend not hours, forget hours, days upon days upon days. Like, so Phil Marks was the reason I got good deep fishing, not because he taught me a thing. He didn't teach me. He didn't say a word to me when he won that tour event, right? When he won that tour event, and day one, I was sitting in second or third. And then day two, I was in like top 10. And then day three, I went shallow and I didn't make the cut for day 4 or whatever it was. I was so mad, and I saw that event, and I remember how hard I had to work for all of my bites. And then to watch him, like, it was easy.
Like it was easy. Yeah.
And so I went out there that year and just started fishing deep like crazy. And I guarantee you, I know for a fact, like for 100% fact, I didn't fish deep like 99.9% of everyone else. I went and did what I thought the only way I could do. Like, so I wasn't graphing, I just went fishing. And over the next year, well, it started years ago too. I was out, I don't know where, I have to put this in there. Years ago, there was that Bass and Bucks tournament, right? And we rattle trap fished, and we sucked as usual or whatever we did. And then next thing you know, I don't know if it was Randy Melinder won it or what happened, but whatever it was, I was going, man, I don't understand how these guys keep on catching these giants. And one of them was your old fishing partner, Pete. Pete. Certain guys just kept on bringing in 8-9 pounders, and I couldn't figure out how. And so I was like, man, I don't think they're rattle trap fishing. I think they're out there cranking. So I went out there cranking, like after one of those events. I cranked all day long, caught like 3 little ones, and then one spot I catch a 6, a 5, and a 4 on 3 back-to-back casts, and I go, forget all this rattle trap fishing, right? Well, I'm not saying that's the deal either, but I figured out some things over the next couple of years, and I figured out my way of like what I needed to look for deep fishing. As I started doing that, though, you can't like graph these spots. You can't find these. They're very hard to find. Like they take days upon days. And at the time, it was kind of easy. No one was really doing it. And when I say easy, no one was doing it, and I had it all to myself. Well, then eventually people start, you ain't enough 30-pound bags. They start coming and looking. And after so many of those places became like they would get stolen from us. I mean, and because like we would like see the guy, and then the next week he'd be there. Like he didn't find it, he'd be off in a distance, whatever. And you can only do that so many times to where I was either going to quit fishing, right? I was going to do something not bad, but I was so fed up with it that I was like, I'm done with it all. I don't even want to be on Rayburn. And so, I kind of quit doing it for a while out there deep and shallow and all that stuff. So, I mean, but Phil was the reason I started deep fishing, because I wanted to find that. I wanted to see what that was like.
Yeah. What the Mecca was like.
Yeah. And I found it at times, but man, there's nothing worse when you lose. Man, when you spend that many days out there, and then I spent a couple of years trying to find it and never finding it. Like I spent like 3 or 4 years, and I was like, I'm done with it. I don't even want to go practice anymore. Live scopes kind of made me go back out there and mess around, but not for the reason of winning a tournament. I just kind of enjoying like doing something different and learning it. But it's not winning me tournaments or anything.
Well, I mean, Rayburn is what it is. I mean, I fish with Clayton, and I mean, I've heard the stories, Albert stuff and how much stuff's been hijacked, and it's made one of the best fishermen on Rayburn quit fishing. Albert has literally quit because of people that have, jumped on their stuff, and they have literally watched them do it. And so I don't know. I fish with, I'm back fishing with Clayton again, and we fished this year, and we really haven't had a good tournament on any of that stuff. I mean, we won the Outlaw Championship, and we caught half up the lake, half down the lake. But I've yet to see a day where we pull up on a spot and they're piled up. And I think part of that too is because there are only a certain number of spots, and when you got other boats rotating through them, it's going to mess it up, and guys are going to catch fish. So. But, you go back to when the grass was the deal in the grass. You were so successful in the grass. I mean, it was the same thing. We lost drains and ditches to guys that saw us on one tournament on Saturday. You go back the next Saturday and they beat you to the drain, and the fish, they catch the fish. But let's go ahead. Let's give the people a little bit about the trap, because I don't think that we've given enough to some of the things that people want to know about the rattle trap.
Give it. Okay. Yeah, go.
So one of the biggest things, and you and I've talked about this. As a matter of fact, you've got me kind of on the rod I'm using right now. I think the rod is a major deal, especially if you're fishing hydrilla with the rattle trap. I think you need, I for a long time threw an American Rod Smith 7-foot heavy action rod. When I rip a rattle trap out of the grass, I want it clean. I want it to shake off of there clean. And a lot of times you use a medium heavy, you're not going to get that rip clean. And to me, the clean is the biggest thing, because that trap flutters, and that's when a lot of them bite it. Line, I think line dictates a lot of it. If you're fishing deep grass, a lot of times I'll throw 15-pound line. Go ahead.
You're not throwing braid?
No, I'm not a braid guy on trap. I'm not. Heck, when I fish with Klein, Tim, he throws a dadgum spinnerbait everywhere he goes on braid. I'm like, I can't do it. But no, I'm not a braid guy on trap. My standard is 17 fluorocarbon. A lot of times I will go to 20, like right now when the lake being shallow and the lake being low, I throw 20 a lot on a trap.
Why not braid?
I think braid is very, you can feel everything, but sometimes I think you feel them too fast. I think it's too easy to pull the bait away from them. I don't like sometimes how big a hole braid puts in their mouth. I think if you use braid, then you better go back to a softer rod instead of a heavy rod. I just never liked the feel of it.
You lose fish more on braid?
It has been so long since I've thrown braid on it that I couldn't even give you a good idea of that.
You throw your swim jig on braid?
Absolutely. I don't know any other. I mean, once I went to Travis for an FLW and caught fish on Travis with 60-pound braid, I was like, heck with never putting anything else on there.
See, I put braid on only if it's real thick, but I used to. I think braid is one of those deals that it feels good at first, but if you ever can figure out how to get away from it,
yeah.
And remember, I was throwing a swim jig over grass, so there was no reason. I'm not going to lose them in the grass. If it's just hydrilla, you're not I didn't understand why I understand if it's hay and all the other stuff, right? But if it's just hydrilla for a swim jig, I throw 20, 25-pound test line, usually 25 on a swim jig all the time. The rattles, because someone asked me on a comment, you ever throw your hybrid hunter on braid? And I'm like, man, I never even thought about doing that. Wouldn't. And if they asked me, I'd probably go like you. I'd have to give them like a whole bunch of reasons why. Yeah. But once you don't need it and there's no reason to, I think I think braid, there's no comparison. You will lose more fish on braid, correct?
Absolutely. I think so.
With treble hooks.
Yes.
You're going to bend more hooks with it.
Yep.
You're going to put bigger holes in their mouths. I agree with all that stuff. It might feel better, but we're tournament fishermen, so maybe I don't think this should matter, but we're trying to figure out how not to lose. If I lose one less fish than you in a tournament, there's a good chance I might beat you.
Yeah.
Just one fish.
No doubt.
And chances are it's not a 2-pounder either.
But
it's a big one. And so like I always tell everyone, I don't care about losing 2-pounders. My whole setup for fishing is like, how do I catch the 5 to 9-pounder and get them in the boat? Because that's usually what's going to, that's what's going to win you the event. And 2, anyone out there fishing to this day, they can say what they want to, but they don't go around taking pictures of the 2-pounder. They want to if they catch a 10-pounder, that's the one they're going to talk about. Yeah. So it's like, so you should be set up to land the 10-pounder. I'm not saying you should have a heavy rod, but I'm saying you should do everything possibly you can to where the 10-pounder is what you're more focused on, not the 2-pounder.
Yeah.
Right. And so I agree with you. I'm trying to think. I threw braid a lot for on the rattle trap, but I don't think I do anymore at all either.
Yeah. I tried it and I just never really liked it. I throw braid on majority of my top waters. I throw braid when I'm flipping hydrilla, and occasionally I'll use braid when I'm flipping bushes. It just depends on the situation with bushes.
So top water, 100%.
Yeah, unless it's a smaller top water, and I use monofilament. But any a spook, a buzzbait, a plopper, I use braid.
Okay, me too. And I throw a swim jig on braid and on anything that like. The higher the swim jig is in the water, the more I'll throw braid.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And I mean, I'm not afraid to throw it on fluorocarbon. And I mean, the one, like I said, the crazy thing is I was at Travis when I finally, I'm throwing it on fluorocarbon and I broke one off or something. And I had another one with braid and I just reached down and I picked it up and they bit it just as good. And I'm like, to heck with it. My deal is I like the feel of the bite on braid. But now when you're at a place like Travis and you only have 2-pounders, then you probably are overcompensating and you do take a chance of losing a fish that you might have caught on.
No. I agree. What I was saying though is that like, but I'm not on Travis most of the time. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And so or my point is this, if it obviously 10-pounders, there's going to be guys listening to this like, I don't have 10-pounders. No, but there's still a fish in that lake that I care more about than the other one. And so,
the difference.
I care more about getting the bigger one in than the smaller one. So my gear's always geared more to a bigger one than a smaller one.
Yeah, absolutely.
See, and do you see, I never even think about stuff like this.
I try not to think about it. But it has gotten in my mind some days when Rayburn, there's a certain time when the water gets in the bushes at Rayburn and every fish in the freaking lake gets in those bushes. Now, there's also a certain time when every one of those fish that gets in the bushes is a 2-pounder. But then there's times when they're all big ones. And sometimes I do ask myself when I've gone through an area and then like I come back through an area later in the day and it was real good in the morning.
Did he freeze? See, he froze on me. I know what he's about to say because I already know this. He's gone through an area and he got 0 bites or almost none, and then came back through it later on and got bit. I'm that guy though that doesn't care. Like I just rely on my 25 years of experience to let me know that 99% of the time, I don't think it's ever that. I think it's the fact that the fish weren't there, they weren't biting, or what it wasn't, whatever. I've also fished enough tournaments to listen to other, and like we talk afterwards, and we all have the same experiences. That like 12 o'clock rolled around, we all started catching them, you know, or this or that. So I rarely sit there and I'm not saying things wrong with this question, but I've gotten the question a lot of too about like braid on top waters or frogging. Like I don't like to throw braid; they can see it on top water. I'm like, I frogged my entire life. I've caught 5 million fish on a frog. I don't think like those fish can't sit there and look at that braid and we're not bothered about it, and then other ones were, you know. And so, to me, it's rarely that big of a deal. I'm not a guy that's big on fishing line either, though. Like the size of fishing line. I've always said that. I've fished too many times with co-anglers. I've gone to too many lakes in this country, and you get to a lake and you draw a local, and they're over there with 8-pound test line, and I'll have 18-pound test line, and I'm smashing them, like dragging something, like throwing a shaky head or doing like something, and they're going, I can't believe you're throwing that, and they like downsize more. And I'm like, hey man, you're downsizing more, but it obviously doesn't matter on my end, because I always think spots. I always think what you're throwing and the spots you're at in your pattern is a million times more important than all this other stuff. So I'm not going to sit there and sacrifice throwing braid. Like if I want to throw braid, I'm going to throw braid, right? And I'm throwing braid for a reason, and it's usually because I have to. Like I have to get something out. Like I have to get a fish out. It's going to work better. Like throwing a swim jig on braid over like Kissimmee grass or hay grass or whatever you want to call it. You throw it on fluorocarbon, regardless of whether you can land the fish or not, right? That your bait doesn't work as good over that stuff if you don't have braid on. So I'm one of those guys. I basically finished your story for you. I already knew that you went through an area, right? Didn't catch anything, came back later on that day and caught them.
Yeah. But I get that the braid noise gets in my head more than it probably does affect my fishing.
See, and I told him it never, like stuff like that never gets in my. I don't. How do I say? I don't think this will sound cocky. I don't know. I don't ever think about anything like that while I'm fishing.
Right.
I have a lot of confidence in the way I fish that it's rarely, 99% of the time, it's never what I'm doing. It's time of day or we need to change up. But what I'm doing is the right way to fish. And if it's not working, it's not because of some random thing. It's because either the fish have changed and I need to change with it or whatever. Okay. You'll love this story. You'll love this, Chris. I wonder if you fished this event. It was a July event. I think you were there. It was a July event on Rayburn back when the lake was falling, when it got down to like 10, 11, 12 foot that year. Remember when it got really, really low?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. There was a July event and it was some random summer event, but there was like a lot of people there. Me and Jason fished it. Well, the day before we practiced and we had, we were catching them in July. It was around the 4th of July, something like it was super hot. It was a Bud Light event, I think is what it was. And we were in Buck Bay. I'll never forget this, dude. It was probably the best day of fishing on Rayburn we've ever experienced. We were in Buck Bay. We were throwing yellow magics and 2 foot of water on the edge of the grass. Of course, the grass was so low. I mean, it was only 3 to 4 foot. We had no doubt, over 100 bites that day. I would say we probably had 20 of them over 6 pounds. I can't tell you how many times we would have multiple bites like multiple fish on the same cast, and they'd be giants eating this thing, like big one, like 8-pounders blowing up on it, eating it, and like you were pulling on them with no hook. Okay, it was incredible. Now I came to realize what was going on. That that was when what I call the worst fish kill we ever had. Where you remember the lake got so low, it got really bad, and then when the lake filled back up, it was like the worst fishing on Rayburn forever. I personally think what was happening is that it was so low and the water quality was so bad that it was killing a lot of the bait fish and everything. And I think those fish were rolling through the shallow water, maybe like redfish stuff.
That's the next year when we had all that scrub brush looking stuff.
Yeah.
So and you couldn't
I think big ones were, because for fish in July to be up there like they were, I think they were rolling through and just eating every single perch and shad in shallow water, and it was a bad deal. Well, anyways, we go out there the next day and we start off and we catch like some fish. And I catch a 5-pounder and we go along, and now it's about 11 o'clock and we're not getting bit like we were the day before. And like because it was so, we would do one of those things where you'd like make 2 or 3 casts and get bit on 2 or 3 casts and then troll for like, 75 yards and then start casting again and get bit. And so we like had these waypoints, but all they were waypoints from the last time, like when we just started fishing again. And we just made our whole round in buck bait. It didn't matter where we went, everywhere. It was phenomenal. So the next day we're getting bit, but it's not the same. So about 11 or 12 o'clock, you can ask Jason this. We both took off our hooks in the tournament. We took off the hooks in the tournament and threw that yellow magic without hooks on in the tournament because we didn't even care if we missed them. We were like, something is different, and this is the only thing that's different. The day was the same. It was everything. And so like we literally fished for like 15 minutes without hooks on in the tournament. You can ask him that. He'll tell you we did. And then we're like, oh, and then we didn't get bit. We're like, okay, it's not that. We won the tournament. Hey, we still won the tournament with like 22 pounds, but it just wasn't it wasn't as good. But I swear to you, we took our hooks off and threw because we were like, this is the only thing that's changed.
Yeah. I've not done that before.
Well, trust me, it took, I said it was when it goes down as the best day you think you've ever had on Rayburn, not like weight wise, but like it was just, I've never seen anything from start to finish just be that good in July. And it was just incredible. Yeah. And like I said, we won the event, but it was, and that was when we got our fish in, they were these giant, long fish. And they looked big. And then we put them on the scale and they were 22 pounds. But I'm like, man, those look like 5-pounders. And I think, I'm telling you, they were dying. That's when we started realizing, like from that tournament on, the lake, the weights and tournaments dropped bad that whole year. And then by the end of the year, it was like 16 pounds to win. Because I think they were dying.
I remember the fact that like the next year when the lake came up, I think it got high the next year, didn't it? And all that scrubby stuff was in Veach, those scrubby little weeds. And I'm telling you, it was like for 2 or 3 years, Veach was never the same.
Do you know why?
Huh.
Okay. So, God, I hate that I'm going to forget his name. Remember the guy who owned Kickerfish?
Yeah.
Beard, awesome guy. Like I know
exactly what you're talking about.
Dude, he was Kelly, really good to me.
Kelly.
Yeah. So Kelly was on Rayburn. I'm pretty sure it was Kelly. It was Kelly or it was Randy Qualls. It was one of the two. So they went back in those creeks, like pick out Boggy or one of the, I think it was Boggy. He went back in Boggy and the same thing, right? Like you go back in there and it looked phenomenal because everything's flooded. So I've never forgot this. This is probably something I should never share because like I use this now all the time. He said he went back in there and they tested the water because he couldn't figure it out. And he said he smelled something. And when he tested the water back there, the pH. So what's pH balance? don't get me lying. Is it 7? I think it's 7 is someone on here will do that. I think it's 7. And it was somewhere in like 8.6 or something. It was like so high, the acidity level from all that stuff that came, that he was like, dude, it was really, really bad. And it made me think about that like, hey, that's everywhere on the lake. And if you remember, when you would catch them when it came up, they were all in the main lake. Like, it wasn't good back in creeks.
It wasn't good. I know that. And beach stayed that way for a couple of years.
Well, I'm telling you,
at the point I didn't even go in there.
Well, everything was rotting. Yeah. All that stuff was rotting away. And I was like, oh, that makes a lot of sense.
You know, back in the day, a long time ago, Jimmy Houston used to, this is back in the 90s. Jimmy Houston used to always talk about his pH meter. You know, he was sponsored by, I can't remember the company that made it, but that was a big deal back in the day, and Jimmy would sell those things.
So tap water is 7, 6.5 is maybe. So at least I was somewhat right about the 7 deal. Yeah, and he's I really pay attention to that when it floods, because if it floods on Rayburn and it floods, but I think it's fine when it floods right away, but I think over time it'll start to decay.
Yeah.
See, 0 to 14, 7 is neutral. Man, I finally got something right. I'm keeping that with me for a while though. I'm staying with that. I got it right.
Well, it makes a lot of sense at Rayburn too, because you can tell a difference sometimes.
Well, when it floods in the bushes, it's fine. But the bushes aren't a lot. Like, they're not. They don't have a bunch of leaves. I think it's fine with the stuff that grows naturally. But when the lake gets low, some of that stuff is unnatural. Some of that's like that year, it had stayed low for so long. It was a lot of unnatural stuff.
On that question about the line, you know as well as I do, Pete that I used to fish with, Pete's good around trap fishing as anybody. He never threw nothing but 15 or 20 pound big game monofilament forever.
You throw mono?
Mono.
You do?
Never. Do I? No, I throw fluorocarbon, but Pete never threw. Pete never ever threw nothing but mono, ever. If I go get him and take him out right now, he's gonna have on 20 pound big game. He carries it in his pocket, I think.
Well, I throw 20. I throw 20 all the time too. I throw Sunline 20, which mono? Is like, no, I don't know if I own mono.
Yeah, that's the question: is mono or fluorocarbon? And I throw fluoro, but I do know that like Pete still throws mono. I'm just thinking of people that I know from Rayburn that are good. Them Moorhead, the Moorhead boys, they all throw.
Yeah, but man, so listen, I'm one of those guys that, like, just because you did it in the past doesn't mean you were right.
Well, I'm not saying it's right.
You know what I'm saying?
I do know guys that still throw mono on a trap. And there's times that I think when I'm out there fishing and I'm like, man, it doesn't seem like I would get as many. You would get more bites with mono. There's times I feel that way, and I feel like some of those lighter bites I might catch because you feel them so fast with fluorocarbon. With mono, you're not going to feel them. You're not going to feel them as fast, and they might eat it a little better. There are days I've thought about that. And
let me tell you something about why. So what hooks? Because I think hooks are a big deal. Kevin Van Dam always has those triple grip hooks, right? I've never thrown one in my life. And I hear a lot of, it's Kevin. I get it, right? Like it's hard to tell Kevin that he's wrong. And I'm not saying he's wrong. But what I will say is this. And I'm not saying I'm right, but this is what I'm thinking about. If you go to another lake, like say I go to like Lake Nacogdoches or a lot of these other lakes that I can go trap fish, Toledo's one too. If you go to Toledo and you get bit, or Lake Nac, especially Lake Nac, I know it's on Lake Nac. Every fish I catch on Lake Nac is down in the throat. Like if I throw a rattle trap, it's insane. You go to Rayburn and it's like 1 out of every 10 has it in his throat.
There
the rest
you go.
of them are here and here.
That's what I
Philip
checked.
Philip
It's
Krilia. Listen,
It's
Philip
pressure.
Krilia. Philip Krilia has weighed in a 7-pounder for the last 10 years in every tournament, and he's hooked one in the tail. Every tournament he comes in and tells me, he's like, well, I caught another one in the tail. And I'm going, and that's why I won't throw those triple grip hooks, because of the pressure, because of how they eat. So I always wanted the round bend hooks, because I'm like, man, if it just swipes at it, I'm hoping I just get a little tip of the hook, you know.
The hook deal, that's something me and Dickie have gone like into in depth. And the theory really on it is exactly what you're talking about the round bends.
Okay.
If you have a day where a lot of fish are slapping at it, missing it, then you definitely want to throw round bend hooks, because of the fact that you might get them in the side or whatever.
You agree?
Oh, 100% I agree.
Okay.
But I
don't you freaking go out on me. He was right about to drop the knowledge. He told me beforehand that that every once in a while he's like, he'll get perfect service at his shop, and then for no reason whatsoever he loses it. And he couldn't, I swear he didn't plan that. He was like, but I'm like, I have to wait till he gets back on, because like I want to know what he has to say. So so this is what's really cool about these podcast things that I've been doing, if you want to call them podcast or live stuff with you guys. As long as I've known him, I've never talked to him this long ever about trap fishing or any of this stuff. And I don't know what it is about some of these things that it makes it easier, that you're not trying to I don't know. It makes it easier to be able to talk about stuff like this. So it's really cool that I get to hear some of the things as well. I've never got to talk to him. And like I said, he is one of the best trap fishermen I know maybe in the country. And so even little stuff like that, okay, we still throw, I guarantee you, I don't have to ask him, but I guarantee you throw 7-to-1 gear ratio. I know we throw about the same rod. We basically throw the same line. We still change out our hooks to put a certain hook on there for the same reason. And so I guess that's a little bit about what I was talking about earlier, just right before we started that conversation, was that when you get on that stuff about, you think the braid makes too much noise, or do you think this, or does this get in your head? 9 times out of 10, none of that stuff ever gets in my head. I usually think it's something else. I rarely ever think it's like the equipment I'm using or any of that stuff, because I'm not saying I'm always right, but like normally I'm like, okay, this makes my point, is that he's doing the same thing I'm basically doing. I think he's one of the best. So chances are what we're doing is both right. So it's obviously other factors. So that's why even on my channel, I'll give y'all some hints, and sometimes y'all need to know like what rod, what reels. Like I think all those are important. It's not that they're not important. It's just rarely do I ever get caught up in it. It's like I figured it out. That's what I do. That's my setup. Like I don't need to sit there and overthink it. It's right. Then I think that allows me, it's a lot easier for me to focus on fishing and not everything else. I rarely, and I can get way off topic here. There's a couple, sight fishing has been one. I think my setup now is the best I've ever had for sight fishing. And I've been doing it forever, but I always think I was at like 90 to 95% doing it the right way. I think now I'm at about 100. Frog fishing in the pads took me 6 to 7 years before I thought I got right as I was getting about as good as I could possibly get with knowing my equipment. That's when it started to go downhill and the floods came and it killed all the pads. And most of that was rod. And I probably went through 20 to 25 rods of breaking rods, wrong rods, things like that. Even the line, and maybe a lot of that's just the fact that it's gotten, the equipment's gotten better, like lines gotten better, rods have gotten better. Either way, I think that that's a big deal. So I focus more on everything else and rarely about the equipment. You know, that's me personally. I hope he figures out how to get back on because I really want to know what he was about to say. And don't let me forget, we were talking about round bends. We were talking about round bends and about he goes, but okay. Hopefully I'll remind him what it was. And then maybe he can't get back on. I mean, shoot, we have been going at this for 2 hours. And eventually I got a kid that's sick and something else. I've had a lot of phone calls lately. But yeah, if we can get him on in the next couple of minutes, if not, I might have to stop it. Either way, I'm probably going to stop it maybe after he gets back on because I really want to hear what he has to say. But that trap fishing, like I said, he wants to talk about. I see, even in this conversation, he does a lot of that other stuff about like everything else. I'm over here trying to figure out why I don't think there's as many fish in the grass. Like that bothers me 1,000 times more. It's probably because there's no real good answer and it's only speculation and then trying to figure it out. And I want to hear everyone's opinions because I mean, I've got mine. But I mean, they don't necessarily like none of it makes any sense to me, but I care more about that stuff because you can have all the perfect stuff, all the right rod, all that stuff. And there's going to be guys on here and it sucks because they're never going to go out and get to experience like those 100 fish days on Rayburn throwing a trap. I don't know if we'll ever see that again. Think about that. I don't think it's pressure. I really don't because I think I think we've always, man, ever since I can remember going to Rayburn, there's always been a bunch of people out there. And to be honest with you, I see less people on the bank now than I ever have. And yeah, I don't know. There was a comment on here. Spooky, I think Spooky, you were the one who said it about throwing a hybrid hunter for reds. So the hybrid hunter was the Bubba for before that. And it's still that someone asked you how many people have the original OGs. Well, I mean, obviously I have tons of the original OGs. I was the first one who ever had one in the country. Like there was only one and I had it. What I'll say about in Strike King, I've said this before, but if anyone doesn't know, Strike King, it's still the same OG. There's nothing different. We just licensed it out from. We got a partnership with Strike Pro. It's a great deal. Like I talked to those guys at ICAST. We went and had dinner with them all. Like I still know. Like they still. Either way, it's the same bait. It's not even a different mold. It's exactly the same thing. We just licensed out from those guys. It's been a perfect deal. So what I'll say to all that is I did go out with Fernet at last year to I'm drawing a blank. In Louisiana, what's the best place to redfish in the country? Chris, what's the best redfish place in the country? At the tip.
I know Louisiana. That's where Matt and them go all the time.
What is wrong with me?
That what Classic was that year.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I don't know why I can't think what is wrong. Anyways,
that's where Matt and his dad go every year.
Venice. Thank you guys. God, Venice. So went down there and we were working on Strike King stuff, and I had the shallow one and I broke it out, and Frenet's never seen anything like that. Dude, I freaking smashed him on it. So I got a video, I got it all filmed. I haven't released a video yet. I'll work on that. I'll release the video in a month or two. But go back, Chris. You said
I'm sorry.
And then you said, but yeah, we're gonna end after this. You said, but
I do throw I do like the Van Dam hook a lot. And I'll put it on the front of my traps most of the time, and then I'll put a round bend on the back.
Really?
Yeah, and it all just depends on. Now, if they're biting like you're talking about, I will go 2 round bends, and it's different sizes. Sometimes I'll go up to a 2, and sometimes I have a 6 on there. It's another one of those deals where it's just kind of how they're biting that day, but I wish I could tell you that I knew someone that has the whole hook deal figured out, but the guys that I know, they're as good as they are with a trap. You're going to lose. I mean, that you're going to lose some.
Did you ever get in the red trap, the red hook?
I ain't going there.
Oh, I asked you a question you want to talk about.
You said just tell if you don't want to go there.
Interesting. You might have given that away.
I do throw a red hook some. I mean, it's always been a deal down here. I do throw a red hook some. How much difference it makes, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't. It's kind of I want to say a confidence thing, but I've also been known to have days where they're not biting very good, and I'll take that red hook off.
What about one more thing? What about the silent thing? You ever thrown this like?
I never have thrown a silent trap. I never have.
I get a lot of that about the hybrid hunter, and I think, listen, it'll all work. I will say, I think I can talk about this. Yeah, because there's no way anyone would know. The silent thing will work. The problem with the silent deal is a lot, like 1 out of every 10 people want it, right? And then others, it's like throwing a rattle trap without rattles. I mean, it's kind of hard to say. The names that the names in the bait right there.
Well, but it would be hard for me to pick one up without a rattle.
I know, but I think there's times it would probably work, and I think it would always work as a backup one.
Yeah, correct. Especially on if you're in an area that's really pressured, it might make a difference. So, I'm the guy that used to go into Ann's, and Ann used to get so aggravated at me, not as aggravated as Scott used to get aggravated at me at Needmore, but I would go to the counter, pick up the rattle trap, and I'd open the box and I'd shake it. And if it didn't have the sound that I wanted, I used to be that in tune to the sound, I'd put it back on the shelf and pull another one out until I found the ones I wanted to buy.
Do you think the one knocker's at times better? I mean, I think so at 100%.
I do. Yeah. I think the one knocker, and I think the one knocker definitely has its moments, and I do think the originals are better than the new ones.
Yeah, I mean, I know Watson. Watson has always told me, and he's always gives me pictures. I know this is not about the rattle trap, but he's like, hey, if you find the OG Whopper ploppers that are in this package, buy every one of them, I'll pay you back.
Yeah.
And so I do think that there's something about however, this goes me going, Watson was probably the only one throwing that bait at the time. So of course he probably caught way more fish on it at the time.
No, there is a little something to those ploppers. Jeremy Lawyer told me he gave me the lowdown on that one time, and I guess I won't share it out of respect to him, but
no,
there is a difference in the ploppers.
No, I know there's a difference. I'm saying, it's one of those deals that you're gonna have to convince. I don't know. It's a weird deal.
Those guys in Missouri. Jeremy told me that they have literally taken ploppers apart, and to figure out which ones. It was a whole scientific thing, just like I do some of my baits, but they literally have taken ploppers apart, and it definitely goes back to something about the originals that came out are better than the new ones. And I mean,
I think a lot of baits are like that, and usually it's because however they made them the original, they spent a lot of time on it, and they did a lot of different things, and then all of a sudden, but usually however it was to make those was harder, and so it was more cost efficient to they get as close as you can, but when you do that, some things change.
Exactly. Hey, I had a box when I lived out at Rayburn. Someone broke in my boat one night. It was in the fall. I'd been fishing. I had my top water box in there, and I had a rattle trap box in there. And that trap box had all my old good, just original traps. But this was years ago. I mean, this was probably 2015 or something like that. So I had a box full of good old traps. And yes, I do think there's a difference in them now than there was back then. And yes, I like that trap better. But man, that box got stolen, and I'd been fishing. I came home and I left it in the boat. I left 2 boxes in the boat that night, and of course, that's the night someone comes up, cuts the cover, takes those 2 boxes, and lo and behold, it was one of them was my very favorite trap box. That one hurt. I mean,
You can have my trap box. I got an old school one. And you might have stuff in
you
there.
probably do. You probably do.
I'm being serious.
As much as you used to buy them, and I mean,
it's impressive what I have. I mean, they're in a box that's cut like you can't see in it, like you can't even. I painted the box so you can't see in that box.
That's funny because like that story I was telling you about Dudley earlier when we went to Choke Canyon to go fish that day. He said, "Man, I want you to throw a trap and show me how to throw it." I get in there in his box, and you're thinking this guy's, he's a leading money winner all time at FLW, yada yada yada. And this was years ago. It was in like 08 or something. I pull out his box, his rattle trap box, and he's got like, I don't know, 30 of them in one of them little bitty boxes, covered in rust. And I look at him like, dude, this is why you can't catch no trap fish. Look at them. And at the time, that's when he had that. You remember the rabbit dog spinnerbait that he had that Walmart made? So he's got boxes. He's got boxes of these in his boat, and they're all melted. The skirts are melted. Everything's rusted. And I was staying at Winlet's house, and I came back to Clark's house that night. I'm like, dude, I said, you wouldn't believe what I saw today in Dudley's boat. This guy won all this money, and I said, you don't take care of his tackle. And so from then on, we all gave him a hard time, and I have since heard that he has changed his ways and keeps everything really nice and neat in his boat. But it ain't hard to put some trick worms and some Cincos in your boat and keep them separate from everything else.
Yeah, no joke. I'll leave it at this about that silent version. So we had like me and someone from Strike King, we were messing around like 2 or 3 years ago. Yeah, about maybe 2 or 3, whatever. And he comes down and we got all this stuff. So we went and bought. Every once in a while, we'll like buy a whole bunch of stuff, like things from freaking outside the U.S. and they won't even be bass fishing stuff. Like, and it's not like there's not even a copy thing going on. It's like, what is that stupid thing supposed to do? And because I did that for years with like Strike Pro, like they used to do that all the time where they're like, hey, that's not a bass bait. And I'm like, bass don't know that. And so they're catching fish with teeth, somewhere in Europe on this thing. And so I still to this day have these like crazy different lures. And I'm really just trying to see like what they do, the action, things like that. And there was this one thing, and he goes, he breaks it out, and he was like, hey, look at this. And I was like, okay, yeah. He goes, I think I can, with live scope, I think you can drop this down there and it'll work, And I'm like, all right. So he gets it, throws it down there, and it just goes. Like, he goes, oh, this is horrible, And I'm like, and I'm just throwing, I'm like laughing. I'm like, yeah, waste, and he reels it in. And as he reels it in, it's like vibrating. And I'm like, he's like, huh? He throws it back out. He's like, feel this. And I'm like, that's not supposed to do that. That's weird. So I just, later on, I'm like, hey, give me that. I'm going to throw it around the grass. So I catch like 3 or 4 fish. It was the best and it was dead silent. Even if I say it doesn't matter, because whatever anyone has in their head, what they think it is, they're wrong. I can assure you they're wrong on what they have in their head that it is. And I was going, and they were eating this thing, and it wasn't built right. The hook, like the whole setup was wrong. But I was going, they can't see it, they can't hear it. There's nothing about this that screams like a rattle trap, but it kind of has the same. And I was like, all right. And I don't know if the problem is, I think it's phenomenal bait. And I'm telling you, man, it was not good that day. And I threw it for a little bit and caught some big ones on it. And it really hasn't really been talked about with Strike King yet to this day. Cause I'm like, there's a little part of me that goes, man, with Strike King, I'm always scared I might build something and it's phenomenal, but like no one buys it because of what it is, right?
Right.
I'm telling you right now, I could not convince people to probably go throw this thing. I'd have to make 200 videos on it to convince people, because I promise you, they would be like, I'm not going to go throw that. It's not even that bad. It's just that, like, if they're going to compare it to the trap, and it's nothing like it, sort of, but yet there's no way you would have to be on my boat, and have to be like catching 5 to 1 for you to change. I'm just telling you. So I'm like, I don't know if I want to put myself, my job on the line and go out on a limb on that thing. I'm just saying. But I got it. I got it up here.
It might be the next big thing.
It might be, and I might be the one that's like, oh, I knew about that thing. But I don't know. If it is, man, it's the one thing that I'll be like, well, I guess I missed it. But I don't know. I might bring it back up in our meetings.
That's the thing I like. When baits get popular and you're like, see, we've been catching fish on that for 3 years, and all of a sudden it just got popular.
Oh yeah.
You know, there was definitely one of those swim baits that was like that.
There's still a lot of stuff like that.
But I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of baits like that I don't know about, you know.
I know, that's what scares me too.
Yeah. And it's kind of like what you were talking about. You know, the thing that I know, when Larry Nixon, you know, he stayed pretty competitive for a long time on FLW. Very competitive. And, you know, you were talking about getting older and all that. Larry used to have a guy that simply kept him. This is what I heard. I don't know this for a fact, but he had a guy that would keep him up to date on all the techniques. And then Larry used to always try to find he always had a really good young co-angler that practiced with him when we'd go to events.
Joey Fuentes
was one of those guys, you know. So Larry stayed effective because he stayed. Now, of course, he won a lot of money on a worm, but he stayed on the side of where he knew the technology that was coming.
Well, so Russell's called me twice today, I think. He was out on the water. You know, I got to go. So I think what you're saying, I'll let Russell know this, that starting this year, we're already signed up for next year, 2000. I probably need to switch partners and go find someone in his early 20s that can fish, and just tell Russell he's gotten too old. And I'm just going to tell him, Chris told me that like, hey man, if you really want to stay competitive, you know, drop the old guy and get with someone new. So I guess I'm about that age.
No, you can't do that because Russell's so connected to the industry. Russell knows everything.
Yeah,
so
but
I keep Russell around.
I am. Hey, well, man, I appreciate you coming on.
Oh,
I might try to get Dickie on and let see if he'll get on there. Maybe all three of us can talk a little bit about old Rayburn.
Yep.
Get someone really old. Get old Santa Claus on here.
Yeah. Hell, I'm starting to look like it today. So, man, I enjoyed it. I'll see you soon, bro.
I appreciate you coming on.
Absolutely. See you, Ty.